Look, maybe we can just mentally to ourselves before we start talking about them, like, only the best thoughts.
I'm incapable. I am so sorry, you guys.
No, it's all good. I'm the same way. I'm a rambler.
Just remember, I don't remember. So like you can hack and slash at anything I say. And later I'll be like,
oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Like that was a breezy conversation. And you're cutting out like 60% of what I say. It's fine.
With the exception of the one time that I cut your comment about Errol Flant's genital warts. You were like, no, that had to stay
I do
in.
remember.
Can't believe this.
I remember listening to that
Can't
episode and be
believe
like,
that
what
got
the
taken
fuck?
out. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Lights, Camera, Accolade. Today, we are talking about the 12th year of the Oscars. And not to give anything away, but this is a very big year for the Academy. We did, once again, watch a ton of movies, but this year, maybe more than others, it felt a little bit more worth it.
Amen.
Maybe.
Amen, sister.
I'm Sarah.
I'm Jake.
And I'm Abby.
So just to set the scene, these movies came out in mostly 1939, on the cusp of a new decade. And just to give you some context, this is a huge year, not only in Hollywood, but globally as well, for good and for bad. Mostly bad, similar to last year. So Germany invaded Poland in September, which was the kind of catalyst to Britain and France declaring war. This is considered the official start of World War II. In response to this, I found out that the U.S. passed the Neutrality Act of 1939, which when I read that, I thought that was the U.S. digging deeper into neutrality, but apparently it actually slightly undid stricter neutrality acts of the mid-30s. So that was kind of cool to find out. So I'm anticipating just maybe more of a shift in what we've seen in some of these movies in terms of taking maybe a little bit more of a stance against fascism. We shall see. Put a pin in that for future episodes. So while all of this is going on, the U.S. economy is still recovering from the tail end of the Great Depression, but art and entertainment are just exploding at this time. So apart from movies, which we will get to eventually, I promise, in literature, we saw John Steinbeck's newest novel, Grapes of Wrath, which I'm pretty sure we'll see another film adaptation of his. Also Agatha Christie's, and then there were none. So maybe, fingers crossed, more fun mysteries. Also, music. I don't know if you guys know this, but when I do research, I like to listen to whatever were like the top songs of the time. Idea. It kind of gets you in the mood. Previous years were a little rough. Starting in the 20s, I was like, I'm so glad we are not in these years anymore.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my ragtime girl.
And like, I like ragtime, it's kind of fun, but some of it is just like, oof, man, this is this is what the kids were listening to.
That white guy invented it, so.
Alexander.
Yeah, Alexander and his all-white ragtime band. But this year, definitely like big band and swing is dominating. And there were standouts like Billie Holiday. Her song Strange Fruit actually came out this year, which I didn't expect it this early because it is one of the earliest protest songs against lynching. If you haven't listened to it, you definitely should. It's haunting the way she performs it. And then on the wartime side, I feel like everyone who has seen like any World War II media, whether it's a show or movie, has heard Vera Lynn's We'll Meet Again. Mm-hmm. Yeah, such a good song. That came out this year too, because obviously England was already kind of dealing with more of Germany's nonsense at this time with servicemen going off to fight. And keep an eye on a rising star in music. Edith Piaf is starting to become famous in Paris. This is the time that so many movies have been made about that it's interesting to see the flip side of what movies were being made at the time. So yeah, that was just my context spiel to get us kind of in the mood.
Have either of you guys seen that great biographical? I know, Abby, you don't really like biographical movies, but there's a great biographical movie about Edith Piaf with Marion Cotillard in the lead.
Yes.
I remember there was a girl I had like a little thing with in college. She told me to watch that, and I was like all Edith Piaf for like a month. Got really into her music.
Did you learn how to sing like her?
Karaoke, if I cut loose enough, maybe, but definitely Vera Lynn. I had a great karaoke song.
Yes.
But yeah, well, thank you you so much, Sarah, for laying out that groundwork there and setting the scene. It really kind of helps get in the mindset because it's so true. It's like we've seen media about this time period, but to now, from our perspective and our journey here, be kind of living in it contemporaneously, mentally, is really interesting because there's so much you identify with, but still elements that are a little bit otherworldly. But yeah, you touched on there the way the president, Franklin Roosevelt, was kind of wanting to get involved more directly with the conflict in Europe. But the American population, as it really always is very anti-war in general. So they were having to do things like Lend-Lease, where we were essentially the factory for the war effort, whether it be the Soviets or the British or the French in the very beginning. And it wasn't until that attack on Pearl Harbor that he finally had the leverage to be able to say to everybody, we need to get more directly involved. So important to set that context. And I thought it was interesting the way that the war is directly referenced in one of the movies this year with respect to France and Paris, but it was the movie I least expected it would be. But anyway, I just wanted to bring up, an early theme that we kind of touched on here on the podcast of the way that during this time period, this several decade time period in the early 20th century, we're really seeing in real time the formation of the American identity, culturally speaking, the way we think about ourselves as citizens in a modern context, even up to today. And I think a lot of the films this year became cultural touchstones. And, some in a more lighthearted way, others in ways that maybe we didn't expect until long term. We see their impact manifest in different ways. But man, I just had the feeling watching so many of these movies this year that this is like, oh, this is where that comes from, or oh, that's where this idea I had about this concept came from. A lot of it was made this year, and it feels like the culmination in many ways of what was a really momentous decade in terms of the New Deal, in terms of the government's expansion in the role of everyone's lives, in terms of the United States taking on a more global role in the world. So we're really seeing a culmination of a lot of different trends, and we're seeing art mirroring that.
Yeah, particularly from the movies the Academy chose, because that's something we always have to keep in mind as well. It felt like Hollywood is definitely celebrating what the American dream was, and it has a few different iterations. I did find out that there is a movie that is considered one of the best from this year, which didn't end up getting nominated, that I'm a little bit curious to look at. Yeah, shocked. This has never happened before. Definitely not in the fourth year of the Oscars, which was a great year.
Looking at you, M.
Yeah, exactly. That the movie was Confessions of a Nazi Spy. And it was the first anti-fascist movie made by a major Hollywood studio. I think it has the guy from Five Star Final, the one who plays the reporter. Oh, sure. And it's actually
you
based...
You must have loved it.
Well, I haven't seen it. I want to, though. But all I know is it's based on essentially a true story about a Nazi spy ring that was operating in the U.S. at this time.
Interesting.
So it seems really interesting, and definitely not nominated by the Academy this year, where we had some really fantastical movies. And I think we just were leaning a little bit more into escapism and idealism for the most part. But yeah.
Wow.
Oh, one final thought before we get started. Where is Charles Laughton? Where's Maurice? Where's Claudette Colbert? Like, there are so many people that we get like so many movies from them, and then they just seem to fall off the face of the planet. And where are they?
Hollywood is fickle. Stardom is fickle, as we all remember from A Star is Born. I think there might have been that thing where it was so dependent on the studio system, the flavor of the month type mentality. They make the conscious decision, this year is the year of Claudette Colbert. And we just see a deluge of wonderful performances from that person. And then, like you say, we don't hear from them again.
I also think that we need to think of the Oscars as essentially a big advertisement for whatever the studios are pushing. So a lot of those actors that we had seen previously, like, for example, Claudette Colbert, she was in a bunch of movies, won a ton of things, and then has disappeared. But we know, having looked her up, her career continued. She was still working constantly.
Right.
So it's literally, at least to my eye, it seems like, okay, we established those people, their careers can take off and continue, and now we're going to establish our next set of stars.
Yeah, it's funny to think about now. Sense. It's like Meryl Streep has how many Oscars? Whereas if you asked Louis B. Mayer, he'd be like, what's the point of that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I'm done getting attached to these people because then we don't see them anymore in the podcast.
Have to start like an extracurricular special of watching movies with like our favorite actors who did not get nominated for Oscars so that we can continue to see our favorite faces.
Yeah, just William
How do you
Powell
feel about
movies
that,
back to back.
Editor-in-Chief? Another side podcast for us to take on?
Once we get to the years where we only have 4 nominees, we can have like 5 more podcasts here at this point. Until then, though, let's keep it on track.
Speaking of,
I'm ready to.
Do we want to talk about our first movie?
Let's do it.
All right. So Stagecoach is the first podcast sanctioned Western that the Oscars are subjecting Sarah to. Directed by John Ford and starring John Wayne, this film follows the titular Stagecoach and its society-spanning passengers as they race across dangerous Apache territory. What happens when you put a sex worker, a drunken doctor, a whiskey salesman, a gambling Confederate, a Southern belle, wealthy banker, and an outlaw all in the same wagon? An upstairs-downstairs social drama, mostly. As the cast of distinctly drawn characters makes their way across the stunning backdrop of Monument Valley, Utah, we're asked to confront the difference between what is socially polite and the people society has cast out, and which of those groups seems more predisposed to offering kindness to their fellow man.
Oh, wow. Yeah, what a great way to encapsulate it. I always fangirl when you're done with your explanations, but it always, they're so good. It's like, yeah, you're right. That's what it is all really about fundamentally.
I'm glad it works.
Yeah, nothing else to be said.
Yep, that's it. That's the whole movie. All right, skip to the next one. This movie looks terrific.
Yeah. I think much like I had the feeling after watching The Informant, which I know we didn't talk a whole lot about after we initially talked about it, which was another John Ford movie. This is another one that makes me go, okay, I get it. And I understand why. If anybody saw The Fabelmans a year or two ago, which is kind of like an indirect autobiographical movie about Steven Spielberg, he has this great final scene where a young him named Fabelman meets with John Ford, and he's just getting started in Hollywood, and he goes into John Ford's office. He's so intimidated. He sees all the movie posters on the wall, Stagecoach, Who Shot Liberty Vance, all the other ones. And there's this great little scene where the late, great David Lynch playing John Ford points to the picture and says, "What's interesting about that picture?" I'm kind of paraphrasing. He's like, "Where's the horizon? Is it at the bottom or is it at the top? If it's at the top, it's interesting. If it's at the bottom, it's interesting. If it's in the middle, it's boring." It's like, he got that, man. And I know he was very influenced by, who's that German guy that made Metropolis? Fritz Lang. I think John Ford was a very big aficionado of Fritz Lang, and just the groundbreaking cinematography in this, and especially in some of the action sequences, I was blown away by.
Yeah, it's easy to just jump to the chase sequence, but it looks incredible. And it's wild to think how that was accomplished. Movie cameras are so heavy and so big right now.
Yes, they're huge.
There's some stuff happening in this movie where I'm like, I don't understand how they made that happen, but good job.
Totally.
And also just like the lighting looks gorgeous. Like there are some really great sequences. Someone standing in a doorway and like this long hallway, and just really incredible use of, or more dynamic use of like the foreground and the background than I think that often we're used to seeing in these movies so far. Just like a really great concept of how to like stage and block the whole shot. It's really excellently done.
Yeah. I didn't hate this one.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God.
Wow, that's about as strong a praise as you can get as a Western from Sarah.
It had 2 things going for it that I liked. One, which you guys have touched on with the cinematography and the blocking. There were several shots and several scenes that I was just like, oh, this looks very nice. I think he balanced in a lot of the scenes, because you have scenes that are like in the wide open expanse of Monument Valley, and those do feel appropriately huge and open. And then all of the scenes where they're indoors, it feels almost claustrophobic.
Yeah.
And part of that is, I think, you see not only the floor and walls, etc. of the set, but you actually see the ceilings, which was unusual for the time. So I think that enclosed space, in contrast with like the big open, West, makes it feel very like, oh, I can see how people would get excited about going to the desert. If it like looked like this.
Yeah, that's a great point about the ceilings. I didn't notice that, but you're totally right.
Yeah, you should go back and watch it, because I was trying to figure out what made it feel more cramped. And I'm pretty sure that's what it is, because I don't think most studio sets even would like have
bother to build the ceiling
in most cases. Yeah. The other thing that I really liked is obviously I just really like when it's a cast of characters that are all very diverse
100%.
and even if they're kind of like tropey and stuff and they're like all thrown into one chaotic situation together.
Exactly.
I feel like this happens a lot in survival type movies, but
or like mysteries and that kind of thing.
Yeah, like mysteries exactly of different like class, different walks of life. So I liked that about this, and ultimately I also liked how each character subverted their trope a little bit by the end of it. But then when they get to the town, it's like everyone goes on their separate ways according to their class and situation in life. So I like it was it was fine.
Flip that. We're going to use it against her later when we have other Westerns. No, I'm so glad you brought that up, Sarah, because I think we've seen a little bit of this. Like I think of Shangri-La, problematic movie. There's a little bit of that diverse people thrown into a survival situation or crazy locale, but we see it really executed strongly here. And they have such great personalities and such great opportunities for growth throughout the movie. You know, I thought that Confederate gambler guy was going to turn out to just be a straight villain, but really it shows, you know, like his idea of Southern chivalry, which was really dead by that point in a way. You know, he gets to live that out. We've got the drunken doctor who sobers up to deliver the unexpected baby, which I just want to say, she looked great for being that advanced pregnant. She was covering it up pretty well. That came out of left field.
Also, got to be noted, they got a really fresh baby for this.
Yeah.
Like, that baby is little.
A fresh baby.
Okay, fat bastard from Austin Powers. Give me a fresh baby. No, yeah. And I loved the introduction of the baby because it added so much emotional weight to what the group was going through. The stakes went through the roof at that point. And everyone sets aside their, you know, predispositions or their ulterior motives to gather around and protect each other and get through these difficult circumstances. And like you said, it's so foundational because you see like horror movies in particular come to my mind about that thing of all different people having to get through a crazy night in a crazy location. We're seeing that here just stretched out and in the American West, and it was really entertaining to watch. Oh my God, when little he played Poppins in that movie that won last year.
Yeah.
The
My
little
first
bald
note
guy.
is, it's that guy.
Yeah. He's cute. He's a short guy. He's a bald guy. He's got great kind of cartoon face and a great voice. And when he got hit by that arrow at the start of the Stagecoach chase scene at the end, I was like, oh my God. And then when Andy Devine got shot, I screamed at the screen, critical protection to Andy Devine. I love Andy Devine. And, you know, I cared about these people in a way that I didn't, it like came out of nowhere. By the latter part of the movie, you're really invested in their whole journey. And it made every action in that last battle feel that much more compelling, you know, because you're like, what's going to happen to these folks we've gotten to know?
Yeah, I will on this. How do I say this? Okay, so two things. The music also for the score, I'm going to assume did a lot because I don't know what Westerns were like in the silent era in terms of the scores that they use, if it was classical type music or if they had already kind of set what we think of as the standard Western time. Like it just sounds like you've got cavalry, etc. Or if this movie is the one that did it. I know this movie is the one that brought Westerns back into Hollywood in a big way because they'd kind of died after the silent era. But one of my first notes was the music when you see the cavalry people, you have the triumphant Western, like here's the cavalry. And then as soon as you switch the scene to the Native American tribe there, it's like the spooky Native Americans, war drums and stuff.
It really like is setting that.
Yeah. So that's kind of how it started. So my notes started a little bit more negative a bit. Ultimately, taking the movie for what it was, I really liked it. I know as far as the actual Native American actors on set, they were paid union-based pay. So I think it was Navajo Indians, not Apache. But they actually did get paid appropriately. So that's nice, even though I have issue with the way that they're depicted as just like, here are these warlike savages and they're just,
here are these scary people who are only here to kill you.
Exactly. 100%. And I know that gets carried on into a ton of Westerns, which is really, really unfortunate. And I would love to see, because they mentioned Geronimo, like this is all, Geronimo's tribe. And I know Geronimo was an Apache chief, I believe, who...
He's almost like a rebel.
Yeah, like a rebel. I mean, but it like makes sense from an anti-colonial standpoint, right?
Absolutely.
So,
he was a good guy.
Yeah, exactly. Like he was a good guy. So I'm very curious to hopefully one day see a movie from their perspective set in this time frame. Yeah. That was probably my most significant criticism of it, but I do still think the movie was enjoyable as a whole.
Yeah, no, I think that's all completely legitimate.
Absolutely. You can't not acknowledge the problematic nature of that. And like you said, most importantly, the long-term impact. Like we're saying, a lot of American identity being formulated right now, a lot of presuppositions getting locked into place. In many ways.
And in general, the Western as a genre is reflecting the ideals of like manifest destiny on that, that's what people were doing in that time period of when Westerns are typically made. So it's very much about that.
Cimarron land grabs just all around.
And it's not interrogating those ideas. It's just representing them on screen, which is a different thing.
Yeah.
Interesting
100%.
that from a more progressive standpoint, I like that they make the banker guy out to be a villain because that was so 1930s. Yeah. Thanks for that, John Ford. But you need to do a little better on what Sarah mentioned for sure.
Which, to my understanding, he doesn't for his future Westerns, but I don't know much about his filmography or anything. The other thing that I definitely think is worth mentioning, the stunts in this movie were crazy. Like the scene where the Ringo kid, John Wayne's character, is jumping from horse to horse and then he goes like under it and goes through the stagecoach. So that was a true stunt. Yakima Canute, no clue how to pronounce this man's name. But he was a big stunt actor at the time. He actually did one of the stunts in San Francisco from a few years ago, the scene where the walls are falling down. He replaced like Clark Gable in one of those and apparently broke a bunch of ribs because one of the girls in that scene started having like a panic attack. And so she didn't move from her spot. And he had to like jump and get her to get under like the table and stuff. So he didn't quite make it, but he got her out of the way. So I was like liking him so far. So in this sequence, he talked about like what he had to do the stunt. So initially, that fording the river.
Awesome.
Yeah, with the camera like on the top of the stagecoach. So cool.
Yes. So cool.
That made me think of Oregon Trail when they went across.
Yeah, me too. I was like, fording the river. I've died this way in Oregon Trail before. So he was actually the one who made that make it into the movie because they couldn't figure out how to do it. And he was like, well, if we do hollow logs tied to the coach and then underneath have like a wire to pull the carriage, then we can do it. And it worked. So after that, Ford was like, you have full control over whatever stunts you want to do for this movie. So he was like, nice.
Like, I'm going to do some Mad Max shit.
Literally. So yeah, the Mad Max scene, we'll call it all a real scene. And I'll just like describe it the way that he did. So he said, quote, you have to run the horses fast. They were running at 45 miles per hour, more or less. So they run straight. If they run slow, they move around a lot. When you turn loose to go under the coach, you've got to bring your arms over your chest and stomach. You got to hold your elbows close to your body or the front axle will knock them off. So he literally did that stunt. And after it was completed, he ran to John Ford to be like, did you get it on film? And Ford was like, even if we didn't, I will never shoot that again. Like, that was insane. So just crazy stunts. But I can't give any good trivia without giving some bad trivia.
Yeah. Tell us how many horses
die.
Literally. Oh my God. Okay, well, I don't know about death, but remember the running W that I talked about some episodes back?
Tell.
Yeah, me too. But I thought it was outlawed by Hollywood. So I was like, oh, how did they do that without doing that? Well, it turns out they did do that. So they did use the running W in this movie. And on top of that, Yakima Canute was the one who created that. So...
Womp.
Womp, womp.
The duality of man.
Yeah, I thought they just trained these horses really well to fall.
This reminds me of the conversation about Jackie Cooper's abuse and the torture and they're going to kill their dog.
Jake's about to tell us that animal abuse is worth it because it looks cool.
I'm not saying that literally. I'm just saying it's a conversation that could be had in terms of just look at this movie was so found. I mean, this was a wonderful piece of art, I will say, and no one should die for it, animal or human, but it was great. It's a great movie. That's just something I want to say.
Something which when I first started watching them, it really threw me out. But like a lot of Bollywood movies have strictly like CGI animals in them. A horse will show up occasionally doing a horse job, but any wild animal like deer or stuff like that are almost always CGI. And initially when I started watching, I was like, why? They could have just gotten a deer for this.
They didn't want to pay him.
Yeah, they didn't want to pay the deer. But I will say, like, over time, I've been like, and I'm not usually a big proponent of using CGI or whatever for when you can get like a real thing. But I'm like, maybe we should be increasing the technology of rendering CGI animals so that we don't have to use them in film. I think maybe that might be a good idea. Because then you can do whatever the hell you want to them.
Right.
Well, I was watching the new Jurassic Park the other night, and it opens on some capuchin monkeys in a tree, and they were CGI. And I yelled at the screen, it's easy to get a capuchin monkey. You can train them in a non-abusive way. They're like little people, but I don't know. I guess I'm a little retrograde. I like real animals where possible.
It's like I would love to see an animal, but I also think, for example, this way where we know allegedly outlawed, but people were still doing it. It's like I would love to see an animal and trust that it was being treated fairly on screen, and that is not always the case, regardless of what laws we have in place, which is a shame. So
wow.
But also, I still want Asta the dog, so, give and take here.
Yeah.
I guess the only other thing I want to, and this is not specific about Stagecoach, but about all these movies that we're talking about, is the role of the love interest or like the co-starring woman in all these movies, I think is an interesting thing to think about. So we've got the main co-star in this movie is the character of Dallas, who is playing the sex worker who like ultimately gets into a relationship with John Wayne's character. And she's has been kind of rejected by society for her occupation, but is ultimately like very kind-hearted and very self-conscious about her trade. And essentially is a lot of the movie is about basically redeeming her, right? So, all right. Do we have anything else to say about Stagecoach?
I'm ready.
All right. So Wuthering Heights is based on the novel of the same name by Emily Bronte. Heathcliff, a wastrel boy, is found on the streets of Liverpool and brought to Wuthering Heights to live there with the two Earnshaw children, Cathy and Hindley. Cathy and Heathcliff bond, but Hindley rejects Heathcliff, the childhood precursor to being rejected by polite society, even as Cathy is seduced by its comforts. Oozing gothic romance, Wuthering Heights is a ghost story. Lost loves, undying passion, and the desire to belong in a place despite it being engineered to reject you all haunt these moors.
Yeah. Worth noting, another William Wyler movie, a favorite director.
Damn, he knows how to make a movie.
He really does. He is a talented filmmaker. And
he gets great performances out of his actors.
He does.
I don't think he's as bombastic a movie maker as like John Ford, although his movies still typically look pretty good. Like there's some great shot design and that kind of stuff. They are often not overtly gorgeous in the same way or lush in the same visual way, but the way that he manages to capture people feels really interesting. Like even in a story like this where it's kind of very like gothic romance kind of heightened, he manages to find a real sense of legitimate humanity in the characters here. Wuthering Heights is kind of famous for having a bunch of unlikable people in it. But you can still sympathize with them in the sense of like you can recognize like the human impulses within them.
Right.
And he really manages to capture that in a really great way.
Well, I like that you mentioned that because I do have some notes about John Ford's directing style and William Wyler's directing style, so I feel like this ties in. John Ford, as we know from The Informer, would just bully his actors. Like he was borderline cruel with or without the impetus of alcohol. But so that happened a lot. And just a raging alcoholic, ostensibly provoked to giving a stronger performance. So William Wyler, on the other hand, notorious for a million takes, like just making actors do the scenes over and over and over again until they did it well. And many actors would be kind of at their wits' end by the time it was like a take that William Wyler actually liked, but all would acknowledge that, like, yeah, it made me a better actor. In particular, this movie very much humbled Laurence Olivier. He credits it with helping him evolve as an actor because he came from the stage.
Right.
And so he pretty much, while working on this, had a lot of, we'll call it extravagant gestures and kind of overacting that is used to that medium. So William Wyler had stopped him and asked, like, do you think you're at the Opera House in Manchester? And Olivier apparently on set got a little bit defensive about that. And I'm not very good at British accents, but he's like, I suppose this anemic little medium can't take great acting. And apparently Wyler and the entire cast and crew just started laughing at him.
Man.
And so that kind of just like cut him down a peg or two, and afterwards admitted that, like, yeah, I was pretty pompous. So kind of love all of that. Similarly, Olivier during this was like, I did it sitting down, I did it with a smile, did it with a smirk, I did it scratching my ear with my back to the camera. How do you want me to do it?
He wants him to
just
stop
said,
thinking.
I want it better.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
you just get so exhausted to the point where you're just like doing it. And then it's like, oh, okay, you stop thinking. That's really the trick.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're saying they both knew how to manipulate, or to put more charitably, encourage their actors to go the full length that was needed. But Ford did it in a more kind of brutish way, whereas Wyler was a little bit more passive aggressive, you might say.
That, and both of them were very particular, right, in the way that they wanted the performance to be. And John Ford expressed that with insults. And William Wyler expressed that with basically nothing until the actors would kind of break down.
What's worse?
And yeah, exactly. Both sound awful, honestly.
Yeah, both sound terrible. And Wyler has a great eye for weird little details that actually secretly add so much. Like the one I wrote down is there's a point where after like they've all grown up, they're not kids anymore, and Hindley has taken over Wuthering Heights and Heathcliff has kind of been relegated to basically being a stable hand. Hindley has Heathcliff help him up into the saddle on a horse, and most movies would just show like, okay, he's giving him a leg up on the horse. But this specifically is Hindley is putting his muddy, disgusting boot in Heathcliff's hand, and like you get a specific shot of the boot in the hand, which is just so good. What a great detail. It adds so much texture, is adding like a level of visual density to kind of get the point across without having to be like, how dare you put your muddy boot in my hand. You know, dialogue wise, I mean, I know it's the old adage, which is like show don't tell, right? But Wyler's really good at figuring out how to do that in a way that is really interesting.
Well, I'm so glad you made reference, Abby, to the fact that this story is notorious for having unlikable characters, because I agree with everything we said so far about it being filmed beautifully and the Gothic element is there. And I just love the English countryside. But I was really tearing my hair out with a lot of the characters' decisions in this movie. And that's not the actors or the director's fault. That's the source material. But it's just that whole thing of the misunderstanding leading to these life-altering different trajectories in life. And I can understand from her perspective, Kathy, the main heroine, played by the beautiful Merle Oberon, who, as we discussed at the time, has a really interesting mixed ancestry of English colonial settlers in Sri Lanka, but also native Sri Lankan ancestry in her heritage. And it really comes through with her gorgeous face. And she delivers a great performance in this. But her character is constantly vacillating between David Niven, who I love, who's kind of the more conventional hoity-toity English countryside aristocrat, and this true childhood love of Heathcliff, who her father brought home one day. It comes off at times being very fickle, and it's a little bit frustrating to see because it's hard because you sympathize naturally with Heathcliff, with him having come from the gutter, but ultimately he's very much like destroyed. It becomes like a very hate-filled man in the latter half of the movie as he feels he's rejected by her and then goes and makes his money somehow. That's never explained. Hopefully not in an Anthony Adverse style, but comes back to town and is just like flexing on everyone and kind of trying to sabotage her life. And it's a very dark story, to be honest. Yeah.
I know that there has been scholarship on the possibility that Heathcliff in the original novel is like the intention is that he is a character of mixed race.
Which, well, they even reference it in this movie
to an extent. Like they call him a slur, like for Romani people. But there's something where when Kathy is originally rejecting Lyndon, she says, "I'm tired of your milk white face," and basically is setting him in opposition to Heathcliff, who everyone describes as dark. And in this comes across as his darker hair and his darker like coloring generally, but is not like, obviously he's not mixed race. It's Laurence Olivier.
Olivier. He's very British.
I would love to see an adaptation of that really kind of like leans into that. Same. I don't know enough about Wuthering Heights to say if there's any out there, but there should be, because I think that would be interesting.
Unfortunately, the upcoming remake of Wuthering Heights, which looks interesting, is not that, because it's Jacob Elordi, who's like the hottest white guy in business right now.
My toxic trait as a person generally, even though I, love classic literature or whatever and think that adaptation should be good, is everything about that trailer looks so hilariously funny to me that I can't help but support it, because it's got the romance novel like font, which is so funny. I'm sorry to anyone who is a huge Wuthering Heights fan, because I know that there's a lot of people who are extremely mad about the whole concept of Wuthering Heights being presented as a romance novel. But unfortunately, the cut of that trailer is so funny.
Well, it's the chick that made Saltburn, so it's going to be a little crazy.
Yeah, Emerald Fennell. Yeah. Emerald Fennell, go back to writing your children's books. I really enjoyed them.
I'm sure they'll hear this.
Yeah.
I also feel like the newest upcoming adaptation of Wuthering Heights is in a lot of ways more reflective of this iteration of Wuthering Heights than the book. Because this is like half the book and cuts out a lot in terms of like Kathy's children and the second generation of people and stuff. So this purely seemed like a decision to just focus on the very, very toxic relationship between these two characters. But I don't know. I can't help but still like elements of this movie anyway.
Yeah,
One,
I agree.
It's beautiful. Two, the performance, it's just very over the top, but not in a way that I think is bad. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't help but like it. I think it's appealing. It's fun to watch. The performances are like compelling. I like it.
I like the idea of a man being driven so hard by love that he turns into a hater. Thought that was cool. Like, he basically turns.
That's a perfect summary of Wuthering Heights.
Yeah. I mean, he has a surrogate brother who treated him like shit his whole life. And then when he comes back and has money and bails out the brother and buys his house, rather than throwing him out into the cold, he keeps him around the house, almost like Reek in Game of Thrones. There's a great old Dave Chappelle sketch like the Hater Olympics. This man is the triathlon champion of the Hater Olympics. And there was something interesting about seeing that.
Yeah, no, totally.
I did also find out that Vivien Leigh had really wanted to play this role because she and Laurence Olivier at the time were engaged, but the studio didn't want to cast her because she was relatively unknown at the time. But I really, truly do think that she would have been so good in this role. Like, we'll see her in Gone with the Wind, obviously, which won her the best acting performance. And I do like Meryl Oberon, but I feel like Vivien Leigh, as we'll see this year, has a real talent for playing this type of spoiled, unpredictable type of character in this romance that's kind of like bigger than herself that she doesn't fully appreciate. So we'll see some parallels there. Meryl O'Brien was great, but I am very curious to see what that iteration would have been, especially because Laurence Olivier apparently really wanted that to happen and was disappointed that it didn't. And was, by all accounts, somewhat rude to Meryl Oberon through filming, probably because of that. Yeah, so unfortunate.
All right. Anything else to say about Wuthering Heights, or do we want to move on to our next one?
I'm ready.
All right, so our next movie is Love Affair, which is a romance starring Irene Dunne and Charles Boyer. When French painter and womanizer Michel Marnet meets American singer Terry McKay aboard an ocean liner, the two hit it off, despite both of them being engaged to other people. Rather than cause a scandal, the two agree to take 6 months to sort themselves out and promise to meet on top of the Empire State Building if they still want to make a relationship work. Fate and vehicular assault intervene, however, splitting the couple further. But not to worry, gross 1930s medical ethics and disappointing opinions on disability won't stand in their way forever.
Okay, I know you're referencing the problematic element of the movie in the beginning there with the end of your description, but I just want to say I really love this movie. I know it's melodramatic. Some people might be surprised by that because famously on the podcast so far, I take a very strong like anti-cheating or pro-monogamy stance, but I feel like these two did it in the right way. They broke it off with their respective fiancés. They bettered themselves, and it was just so beautiful by the end. There's so much to talk about this movie, but I just wanted to plant my flag and say I enjoyed the love affair. And I haven't gotten Irene Dunne so far. We've seen her in a few things. I'm always kind of like, okay, she's there. This time I really did enjoy her performance. Tell me why I'm wrong.
No, I mean, I didn't hate it, but it didn't really do much for me. And I know it got remade into An Affair to Remember in the 50s. And I think that one ends up being a little bit more popular. This one, I mean, my notes honestly are kind of light.
Really? I cried.
Yeah. Male love interest. Obviously, he's French. So my first note is, where's Maurice?
No, but here's the thing. Maurice, you don't want to bring home to your family because he's going to end up sleeping with your mom by the end of the night. But this guy...
Yeah, I think Charles Boyer was the
kind of French guy that you could bring home to the family. And that's why when they end up together, I'm like, they're going to stay together. I really felt that.
Yeah. So one of the interesting points, because obviously... as the movie was getting closer to their reunion and stuff, I was like, is this going to have just like a happy end? There's too much movie left here.
It's so long. Sorry.
It felt long.
2 hours long.
Yeah, it was overly long. But her obviously getting hit by the car and then going on this whole third act of just like, no, I'm never going to tell him because I don't want to be a burden.
We have to tell the audience because it's the whole point of the movie. So they're going to meet up at 6 months later at the Empire State Building. And all in the lead up to the 6 months, they're like looking longingly at the Empire State Building and they both can't wait to go. And then she's off to go and she like waves goodbye to her friend or something and a car hits her and then she can't go. And so the French guy goes and he's waiting all day for her and she never shows up and he's just crushed. He thinks that she's decided she doesn't want to be with him. So he changed his ways and actually got a job because he was a dilettante and everything to try to improve himself for this woman. And here we think he got rejected, but really it's an act of God that intervened. So her loving him so much, and I know it's problematic because it's like, there's no difference whether you're differently abled or not. But in her mind, she felt that she couldn't be with him. She would be holding him back in some way. So she's so afraid to tell him. Sorry. Go ahead with what you're saying.
Yeah, no, that's important context. You say act of God, I say Hays Code. Is what happened here. And I feel like history would agree in terms of how the screenplay was treated initially, where because their romance starts out as the title of the movie, right? Love affair, somewhat illicit. They didn't want it to openly just fully endorse adultery. So someone had to be punished for it. And of course, it had to be Irene Dunne.
They didn't have sex.
Also, the way she redeems herself is to decide that she wants to teach children, even though she's never shown any interest whatsoever in kids before. And
yeah, she just has to be like this saint.
That's true.
I enjoyed this movie up until the point where it becomes a story about a woman who has to become like a perfect saint and like children and be a teacher, even though she had a passion for performing. And that's what ultimately leads to her happy ending, right?
Oh my gosh.
And instead of just, I don't know. The back half of this movie really leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
Never looked at it that way.
I do like, though, that Irene Dunne ultimately criticized her character years after the film's release, because she was like, if I'd been in that girl's place far from hiding, I would have trundled my wheelchair up and down the sidewalks of New York looking for Michelle. I was like, why not?
I can completely understand and sympathize with the idea of something traumatic has happened to you, and it is a trauma, and not handling it well. Like, I think that's normal. I think it's the part where basically the overarching narrative of the movie is also saying like, this is something shameful and you should hide it. I mean, it does.
Well, take the gender out of it, because when you really love,
but
But for a thought experiment, I think in the context, you're right. That's why she was the character that had to be hurt in that way, because it was like she was the villainess for being unfaithful, but even though she technically wasn't. But anyway, I was going to say, when you really love someone unselfishly, the most important thing that you want for them is their happiness and contentment. So if in your mind, you would in some way detract from that. It's like with Norman,
that whole portion of the movie, like, I completely understand where like the character is coming from. I just think that it's gross that this is the direction that the movie goes in.
Well, if it was the French guy that got hit by a car and the tables were turned, would you have liked it more?
No, I don't think so. I think then my problem with it comes to just like not being honest with your partner or your potential partner.
I don't agree.
Maybe honestly, but I do think that I would probably like it a little better, only because it wouldn't have had the extended last kind of sequences of her character building of like, now she's essentially a teacher and a surrogate mom.
True,
to these
they wouldn't have.
You're
like,
right.
all of these.
They wouldn't have made the guy.
Has a lot of problematic tropes.
Yeah, he would have just been sad and depressed about it, and fallen into drinking or something like that instead.
Yeah, I was literally gonna say like he would have become an alcoholic.
Something appropriately manly.
But I love that scene where at the end they are trying to figure out, were you there? Were you not? There's all this double speak and saying what you don't really mean. I thought the dialogue was very intentional there. And then when it's revealed that she bought his painting, you see this happiness wash over him that you could tell he had been bottling up for so many years.
For 6 months.
And then it was like, right. Well, whatever. But she says, hopefully I can walk again. And he's like, even if you don't, I'll love you anyway. And I guess I'm stupid, but I just think that was beautiful. And I don't know. I think when you really love someone, it's not they should still love me despite this. It's only ever you're thinking, what can I do to make them happy? Which is maybe not healthy, but that's my outlook on love. So it made sense to me. And also, I just want to say the grandma. Can we talk about the grandma in Madeira? Because when they're on the way home from Europe, they stop off on the island of Madeira where my cousin just went on his honeymoon. And the French guy has this wonderful grandma who's so cool. And she has this beautiful house. And they go in the chapel and they are praying in the light. And it's like the love is going to absolve them and make them good. And I don't know. I like this movie a lot. Like I said, it made me cry at the end.
I definitely don't think you're alone in really liking this movie. Not at all. I just didn't particularly like it.
Fair enough.
All right. Anything else about Love Affair, or are we ready to talk about Dark Victory?
Ready.
All right. Dark Victory is the second movie of 1939 where a woman suffers a catastrophic health crisis and is treated like an incapable child by everyone around her. Oh. Starring Bette Davis as Judy Traherne, a young socialite with a passion for steeplechase horses, drinking, and smoking, who discovers she has a life-threatening brain tumor. Dr. Frederick Steele agrees to treat her, falls in love with her, and is subsequently so crushed to discover that her brain tumor can't be entirely removed that he tells her she's cured, when in fact Judy only has a few months to live. While Bette Davis's performance as Judy is terrific and the character occasionally rails against the fate she's been doled out, the insistence on making Judy's happily ever after, marrying, and ultimately sacrificing herself for his comfort, a man who didn't respect her enough to be honest with her about her health, is certainly a choice.
Okay, despite what we just said about the last movie, and some similarities here in terms of being able to communicate honestly about tragic things and having the female character in the perfectly idyllic wife type role.
I just think it's very interesting how many like wives this like year chooses to make, and also how many of those wives either get like destroyed, murdered, killed tragically, or are basically like even the strongest character are basically there to support the men in their lives. I'm just saying.
But Bette Davis was so good though.
She's so good. I think her character is really fascinating. I think that she does a great job with her. Once she finds out that she's dying and kind of like goes through the whole like despair arc, I think that there's some great meat on the bone there.
Yes.
I just think in terms of us talking about how these movies are planting seeds, I think these are some interesting seeds to be planting.
Okay, did not notice this seed because I was just so entranced by Betty this whole movie. They got me.
That infantilization of Betty and Did HIPAA exist at this point?
Oh, I know.
This is so unethical. You can't just not tell a patient what the actual nature of their condition is.
Imagine like everyone around you knows you have 6 months to live and they don't let you get your affairs in order.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely
so
wild.
selfish.
She's rich, so she probably has a lawyer and already has a will and all that stuff. But like, that's just, it's so crazy to be like, we want her to not know and be happy. Instead of like giving her the opportunity to figure out how she wants to spend the rest of her life, literally. Like, it's so...
Go ahead, Sarah. Defend it the way I just defended Love Affair. Go ahead. Now it's your turn.
My note there was like, okay, I'm here for the drama, but I don't think doctors can legally lie like that for ethical reasons. But like I said, I was there for the drama because like seeing Betty Davis so grateful and happy that this doctor had just saved her life when everyone but her knows, including the audience, that like she's doomed, was like, dang. This makes all of this incredibly hard to watch. And Betty Davis just like, she's so expressive through. And I feel like the moods that her character goes through, especially once she finds out that she only has like at this point less than 6 months to live because they didn't tell her when it happened, really parallels the whole like acceptance in general, right? Like she goes through the anger and the bargaining and the grief and then finally is okay with it all. So I just think in terms of her performance, it really just carried the movie to a point where I did like it. All of those problematic elements aside. The other thing that I do need to call out, though, is that her hats were hideous in this movie. They were so, and they let her wear them because they were like, she's only got 6 months. Like,
well, I think
let her
also
look how she wants.
She had to wear a hat because they had shaved part of her head. So.
They had, but there are so many nice hats and like different, you know, everything. They were so ugly. Listeners, like, please just try and find some images of the hats that she wore in this movie. They were very, very bad. I have like 3 notes on them.
Also, speaking of performances, because I agree, Betty Davis's performance in this is like, it makes this movie enjoyable, even though I spent the back half of it like booing, but it's still like booing and having fun. I also think Geraldine Fitzgerald, who plays her friend Anne, is doing an amazing job. Obviously, it's a much quieter performance, but she's spectacular. She's doing so much heavy lifting, like on the edge of the scene in so many places.
I agree.
Wow, so good.
You guys are forgetting the best performance in this movie.
Humphrey Bogart?
Come on.
No.
Ronnie Reagan. We see Ronald Reagan for the first time.
The fact that Betty Davis greets him with, oh God, good morning, parasite. Why isn't that
He's
a gift
such a
everywhere?
Piece of shit in this movie. There comes to the point where she finds out she's dying. She has that incredible scene where she's in the dock. This is morbidly funny, but she's looking over the notes and she's saying to the nurse in the other room, like, what does negative mean? Just like gradually realizing. But after that, she goes on a big bender. She returns to her old socialite lifestyle. And there's just this scene of her and Ronald Reagan repeatedly getting drunk at the bar, talking about the finite nature of time. And I was just thinking, fucking kill me now. If I was like stuck in a bar with Ronald Reagan thinking about the fact I'm dying in a few months. I'm like, this hell is alive. It's right here. So I just thought it was funny to see Ronnie as a young boy playing, you know, pretty desolate character, but you can bet when he came on the screen I like jumped. I was like,
oh yeah, absolutely. I was like, is that Ronald fucking Reagan?
Yeah, I saw his name because, you know, they do the credits and stuff before the movie.
I was like, looking at my phone or something.
You weren't looking? Yeah, my literal first note in this is, ooh, Betty Davis, Humphrey Bogart, Ronald Reagan in all caps. So I was prepared mentally, but I was still just like, oh man. Like I knew he was an actor, but I always kind of just assumed that meant I would never encounter any of his work because it's kind of like, okay, what was he in, like B movies or something?
He was never a big star, but he became head of the Actors Union during the Red Scare and was selling people out.
Oh shit, I didn't know that.
Yeah, scum from start to finish.
Damn, that's crazy.
He married a well-to-do woman from a big Republican family, and they're like, you're handsome and you can read a cue card. We're going to tell you what to do. And then he became governor of California.
Crazy.
The rest is history.
And it's all because of Dark Victory.
The darkest victory.
And you like this movie.
I kind of walked away from this being like, what if East Lynne was kind of good, though?
Oh, yeah, I can see it.
I don't understand how you're being charitable to this, but not the last one. But I guess there's different elements.
You know what my main takeaway was? is Humphrey Bogart is such a fox.
Right? There's something there.
Yeah, I kind of wanted them to hook up in that barn.
I know.
was like,
I'm looking forward to Casablanca in a couple of years for sure.
Even though he kind of has what is that? What do you even call it? It's not a lisp, but thinking about dialects and stuff. But he kind of sounds like he's got false teeth or something. But it's fine because he's Humphrey and he's cool. But I think we're missing the forest for the trees here, because the main advertisement for this movie needs to be the most histrionic death sequence I've ever seen.
Which I was here for.
I did make a note that was like,
dies
is this
for
the
about
longest
15
death
minutes
sequence in any movie?
Yeah.
I feel vindicated because I was staying with my gay uncle a couple years ago for like a month, and he's like, let's watch this show, The Feud. And so he stayed up late at night, and that show is about Bette Davis and what's her face? Oh my God. They had a lifelong feud. Another actress we saw in the Hotel movie.
Joan Crawford?
Joan Crawford. Thank you, Abby. So the show is about Joan Crawford and Bette Davis and them working together later, but still having a rivalry. And I think that Joan Crawford makes fun of Betty at one point, like, oh yeah, with your ridiculous death sequence and da-da-da. And I'm like, oh, it's this movie. This is what they were talking about. It's like, yeah, I could win awards too if I got scenes like that, because she milks that shit.
She really does. And she does great. I'm here for it, ultimately.
You're here for the drama.
Yeah.
It's like, go, little dogs. Go, my maid. I leave you this. I leave you that. No one in the room. Lay down. Give me a blanket. I go to meet my maker. It's like, oh my God, you'd think this is Jesus. But it was awesome.
Yeah,
honestly.
I was like, damn, that final shot. It just leaned so into the drama unapologetically that I was down for it. Love Affair felt like it was just a slap in the face to women. This was instead just like, look,
love.
We're doing a soap opera and you're gonna love it. And I was like, okay, cool.
Well, she was protecting her husband's feelings to the last by not telling him.
They did.
She's like, go to your school presentation.
But he didn't tell her
Bye.
she was dying first, so I don't know. This marriage was built on lies.
Oh, and it was also Buck from Jezebel plays the doctor. And
oh yeah, that's right. That's true.
I just think he's kind of cool.
I enjoyed him in
commanding.
Jezebel. In this, he kind of comes off as like grainy store brand peanut butter to me. I think Bette Davis's performance is so good and his is just fine. And the scenes with them together, I'm like, I love her and like watching what she's doing. And also there's this guy here and it's fine. But the movie's telling me that they're really in love.
I don't think he's like a great actor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he's got a cool vibe.
Yeah, I was mostly here for definitely Bette Davis and, as you mentioned, Geraldine Fitzgerald.
She's awesome.
They were good.
And go get yourself another lesbian friend and go live in her house.
Even though, that was one of the things when Bette Davis's character is dying and Anne knows, and she's protect him, stay with him, take care of my husband. I was like, you can't do a David Copperfield thing. Like,
and get out of there.
Leave. You don't have to
find
stay with him
yourself another
forever.
Girlfriend.
Yeah, literally.
Great callback.
Literally.
Great callback.
But okay, I'm done with this.
Are we ready to move on to our next movie?
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
We better.
All right. So, Goodbye, Mr. Chips follows the life and career of Mr. Chipping, a school teacher at an English boys' school. Played by Robert Donat, who we last saw in The Citadel, Mr. Chips is a shy man who resorts to becoming a strict disciplinarian in order to be respected, but not liked, by his students. Disappointment in his career leads him to taking a holiday with a fellow teacher, where he runs into a spunky English suffragette named Kathy Ellis, who is on a biking tour with a friend. The two of them hit it off and marry. Over the course of their abbreviated marriage, Kathy draws Chips out of his shell and he learns how to bond with his students. He subsequently becomes a much-loved figure at the school and is a steadfast mentor even as the country descends into the Great War and beyond. While Goodbye, Mr. Chips is nominally about a man learning to find fulfillment and joy in human connection, with Donna and Greer Garson as Chips and Kathy putting in lovely performances, the refusal to give any of the supporting cast much of a personality somewhat undercuts those efforts.
Do not care about the supporting cast.
I don't know what you said at the end. Me too. I love it. I'm like shaking. I'm like a kid on Christmas morning shaking next to the tree right now to talk about Mr. Chips.
Okay. I want to say one thing first. And then the first thing that I want to say, this movie from the very beginning had me in just like a death grip of enjoyment because he had the best character introduction of all time, like bar none. It's just like, okay, this kind of stuffy, British boarding school, and they're like, oh yeah, you've all noticed good old Mr. Chip, he's sick, we forced him to stay home. I know you all miss him, but he's probably there sitting by the fireside. Immediately cut to like the cutest old man, like sillily running with his little cane to like make it there in time. I was like, oh, I'm gonna love this movie.
Hat is a jar on his head. He's been teaching for 65 years. He still his hat is a jar. You'd think he'd know by now.
Love him.
Me
so
too.
Much. Protect this man at all costs.
I really love the movie The Holdovers, which came out a couple years ago. It was up for Best Picture and some other nods. Oh my God, you got to see it. This was like the original The Holdovers. Mr. Chips is one of the greatest people, fictional or real, that I've ever seen or heard about or viewed. He was such an awesome guy. First of all, I love that actor that plays him. I really like that doctor movie from last year that he was in.
And he won an Oscar for Best Actor.
He did.
This. Yeah.
Yes.
He broke up Gone with the Wind sweep, and I think he very much deserved it.
Good for him.
Where was I? Okay, so at first he's like, if you're a guy, you've been there. When you're new and you're trying to impress all the other boys, but the boys are making fun of you and running circles around you. That was Mr. Chip's first day in the classroom, and he really looked like a dang fool. And he goes overboard trying to be a disciplinarian. And I would say for the first 20 years or whatever of his career, he's kind of just chugging along. But it's not until he goes to the Swiss Alps or the Austrian Alps and meets this fantastic woman, one of my favorite female characters so far. She's so spunky, she's so smart, and she knows just what to do to bring Mr. Chips out of his shell. Their first date is they're trapped up on a mountain, and they really get to know each other, and they're like two puzzle pieces fitting together. And then when they go and they have another chance encounter, they go to this wonderful ballroom in Vienna, and she gets him to dance, and it's so nice, and he finally admits he likes her. And it seems like they have the perfect life. When they get home, everybody's like, oh, Chips is back. And they're like, let's fucking play a prank on him. And he comes in, he's like, I'd like you to meet my wife. And it's like the foxiest woman everybody's ever seen. And they're like, Chips is cool as shit. And that's just the start, because then she invites all the boys over to the house from his classroom, and they all love her. She's making jokes. She's like a good cook and everything. And then she fucking dies. She gets pregnant and she dies in childbirth. And Mr. Chips' whole happiness is taken away from him. But instead of becoming gothic Laurence Olivier in Wuthering Heights, he channels everything she taught him about being a better man to become the greatest teacher that ever lived. He retires in splendor. Everyone loves him. He gives a great retirement speech, and then he's called back into teaching by World War I. And he finally fulfills his wife's dream of him becoming the headmaster of the school, wartime headmaster. And he's so stoic. They're getting literally bombed, and he's like running class, and he's making jokes, and all the boys are laughing. I also love the one boy who gets reincarnated constantly throughout the movie.
It's strong genes. The collie kids.
Yeah, it's the same boy over and over. And first he's a little shit, but by the end he loves Mr. Chips. And he's the last
careful, because that actor still alive.
No way!
As of November of this year.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he's like 96. Let's write him a fan letter.
Honestly, we should.
Genuinely, yeah. Okay, sorry, Jake.
Sorry. And then at the end, he's done his duty. He's served as headmaster throughout World War I. He retires, and then he finally, of course, gets sick. He's dying slowly in his bed, and teachers are standing over him. They're like, poor Mr. Chips, he had a wife, but he never had a family. And he goes, yeah, I thought I just heard you say I never had any children. I've had thousands of children.
All boys.
And then
Which I'm just saying, I agree with the fact like their relationship is fun. I love Greer Garson as Kathy. I think she's fantastic. I feel like that last bit would hit a lot harder if you knew any of these children at all.
Yeah, we do get more of like the Colley dynasty, and just knowing that he died in World War I protecting the other little kid that they had initially fought with and stuff. Like, you get little bits and pieces of it. So I agree. Yes, it would hit harder, but I cried anyway.
Like Mr. Chips, we're going to have some trouble. That's all I'm going to say. Like, you cannot like the movie, but if you say anything negative about Chips himself.
I like his performance a lot. Like, Danette, I think is great. I think the character is very fun. I think this hits on the same problems that I have with a lot of biopic movies, where this is shot like a biopic movie and does a lot of, I'm going to tell you things about this person instead of just showing you things about this person.
Yeah.
And like, I really like The Citadel for that, or it was definitely like my favorite of kind of like the biopic-y movies, for lack of a better explanation, of like taking one person and exploring their entire life and like what makes them the man that they are. Because there's a sequence in that movie where the movie says this thing is hard, and actually the character refuses like the call to go do the thing, and because it's hard, and his life is better if he doesn't subject himself to the trials and tribulations of trying to be a poor doctor just for the sake of, you know, not getting rich on rich hypochondriacs. But in so many of these biopic movies about like one singular man, there is no friction in the story, in the sense of we as the audience know what is right, the main character knows what is right, and we know that at some point the movie is going to agree with them. I think the performances are really excellent. I think that there's great stuff in here, and I enjoyed watching a lot of it. It's kind of like polite laugh, the movie. But there is never a point where there's like real stakes or that something is difficult. We know that it's always going to fight to the end, and it's going to be okay.
So I'm going to touch on what I really loved about this movie that I don't think that we've quite hit on yet, because to me, even though this is kind of the prototype for like the best teacher ever movie that we've seen time and time again, I don't really agree that it was just about examining this man's life, even though ostensibly that was like the structure of it. Because to me, this is also kind of like a what if Cavalcade was good type movie, where it's looking at, passage of time. And also in this case, because it's centered around Mr. Chips, it's like the beauty and importance of everyday life and this connected thread of history that you see only in glimpses, because he's like this stationary figure, but we are aware that all of these boys are kind of growing up and going on and being swept up in all of these various events. Like they have all of the little montage sequences and then little hints here and there of what's going on leading up eventually to World War I. Also really liked that when they're doing the ceremonies that they have to talk about everyone who's died, and they have several of those, that they specifically also have the sequence where he reflects on his friend Max, who we saw earlier in the movie. He was the one who got him to like go meet his wife and stuff.
Only
and
fucking Chips
he mentions
would do that
he found out that his friend Max, who had been a teacher there years prior, had died in the Saxon regiment. And so I'd actually paused and been like, wait, does that mean fighting for Germany? The movie tells you immediately right after anyway, but it did, you know, so it was just like that acknowledgement that life and these grand historic things like sweep you into it, right? I loved that, just the passage of time, and I will protect Mr. Chips at any cost, even though it's like, what do we actually know about him other than he's like shy and a good guy and cares about teaching?
So many good
it's like
jokes.
Nothing, but we don't need to know more, all right? We don't need
his
to talk more.
like Donat's performance is so good.
Saying Latin in funny ways, all the boys are laughing.
Oh, speaking of the Latin, when he says his little Latin phrase, which I then had to Google, like during his retirement speech, it's from Virgil's Aeneid. It translates to, because I'm not going to try and say the actual Latin because Mr. Chips didn't teach me, but translates to, someday perhaps remembering even this will be a pleasure. And I'm just like, oh, damn, that's some good shit right there. Because he's so cute and wholesome, like going back to when he has his romance early on with Greer Garson, with Catherine. They're about to part ways and she like kisses him really quickly, and then he runs after the train and he's like, you kissed me, and she's like, I know that was a terrible thing to do. He's like, you'll have to marry me now. You know, like make an honest man out of me sort of thing. I was like, I love this.
I wish this whole movie was their relationship, because they're so good. Like they have great chemistry.
She's like progressive. She's funny. She brings out the best in
she gets married and like supports her husband and dies in childbirth.
Yeah. But also the scene, because it's on April Fools, you know, so it's like this whole buildup where the kids who love him and stuff are like planning their little prank, and they're like, oh, Chips would have a kid on April Fools. That's so silly. And then they plan this prank, and then Chips comes into the classroom just so quiet and like just barely, zombie mode. And then they're still trying to pull their prank. But then one of the other little kids runs in frantic, and you can tell he knows. And then the news slowly spreads and the class just gets so quiet. I was just like,
they respected Mr. Chips. They respected his wife.
Yeah, they love this man.
I wrote in my notes,
so, I don't know. And this
anyone
also
talks shit on Mr. Chips, I'll fucking kill them. It's literally a note that I wrote.
I do also think that it was kind of sweet that this started prior to the opening sequence with a dedication to Irving Thalberg.
Yeah, very sweet.
Which was very, very sweet. So,
I mean, you covered everything, Sarah. I'm looking at my notes. Oh, Chips had a house hag in the beginning. That was funny. But it wasn't. It was just his neighbor, I think, actually. Oh, it's funny that Chips hates bikes. He was bitching about bikes at one point. What else did Chips say? Let's see. He just had so many good jokes. And he's like a nerd, but he's like a cool nerd. I could just love him.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have anything else to say? Are we ready to move on?
I'm ready to move on. She's like, anyway, I know. She's like, just waiting for you guys to fucking finish crying here. We're just like, and then Mr. Chips.
You guys should have seen what Mr. Chips said today. So funny.
Yeah.
Something, a Latin pun, probably. All right. So our next... So our next movie is The Wizard of Oz, which stars Judy Garland as Dorothy, a young Kansas farm girl who appears to be literally swept off her feet out of her ordinary life and transported to the magical land of Oz, a place where singing and dancing is the primary form of information delivery, scarecrows and tin men talk and walk, lions are blustering imbeciles, horses change color, and the Wicked Witch of the West wants your magic shoes and will kill to get them. A coming-of-age story, The Wizard of Oz simultaneously espouses the importance of home and family, while rejecting the mundane. On the one hand, there is no place like home. On the other, check out Hollywood pulling out every technical stop to tell this story in the most joyfully creative way it can.
I almost feel like we could have a whole episode dedicated to The Wizard of Oz, just in terms of how much it did for film, all of the creative things they were doing, all of the trivia in terms of what was going on backstage, good and bad, the making of this movie. It's just so dense. I don't even really know where to start other than, of course, pointing out that, as we've mentioned, costumes by Adrian. So thanks to Adrian, we have these iconic looks. Even today, 80 years, I can't do math, decades later, if someone dressed up for Halloween as any of these characters, immediately recognizable. They are so ingrained in like American consciousness. And then the makeup by Jack Dawn, who we'd also mentioned because he was the one who pioneered yellowface in the Good Earth, putting his techniques to much better use in The Wizard of Oz with all of the prosthetics, which I don't think I noticed as a kid. The Scarecrow, his face looking kind of like burlap sack-y.
Oh yeah, it's
was
really
actually
well done.
Well done and kind of spooky. I feel like as a kid I was just like, he just looks like a guy wearing the costume, but watching it, and maybe it's also the restoration that we're able to see now, but seeing the detail of the makeup on the face where it looks like his face is cloth. I was like, ooh. Also have to shout out, of course, as the Good Witch, Billy Burke, aka Ziegfeld's real life wife, still working, trying to pay off this man's debt. But yeah, I don't even know where to start with this, because it's so different than anything we've seen, and so colorful and so beautiful, so fantastical. A whole different ball field. Is that the sports thing?
Oh my God.
Something that I don't know if this is really a particularly good intro into talking about this movie, but I was interested because I think growing up or as a kid or whatever, I had always heard that like Wizard of Oz was like the first color movie, which obviously we know that's not true. We saw A Star is Born. It was in color. I think
and
this
Robin
was
Hood.
Robin Hood. This is like number 25 in color movies. And the other part is that, so Judy Garland has also been in another musical this year that was actually more popular at the time. So really kind of the thing that made Wizard of Oz so enduring, A, it's a great movie, but B, how it kind of stuck in the cultural zeitgeist is because it was one of the first movies that was licensed for television broadcast and was basically used to sell color TVs, which they were still making black and white movies to a certain extent until like the mid 60s. So like this was like a huge proponent for selling color televisions, which I think is fascinating in terms of like how that is connected to this being such a pop culture. It's basically the equivalent of I grew up seeing this movie on TNT 1,000 times.
Right.
There's a lot of movies like that for me.
Right? Yeah. So I think that's so interesting in terms of how this has continued to be relevant. And so much of it is how certain things are picked to just continue on in a weird way. Obviously, there's a lot going on with this movie that I think is very special. Like, I think that the way that they utilize color and how they tie that technology so much to a transformative element in the story itself is just fantastic. And it's so memorable that I think it probably would have stuck regardless. Like, there's a reason that they were like, oh, I need to sell a color TV. Let's grab The Wizard of Oz, because the way that they use color is so cool.
Yeah, that first transition transition to color literally gave me goosebumps. Leading up to it, I was like, oh, okay, we've seen a couple Technicolor movies now, so maybe Wizard of Oz won't hit as hard just in terms of like getting to see the color, but they make full use of it.
Yeah, that transition of like the stunt double opening the sepia tone door and Judy Garland in like full color stepping out is so good.
Yes.
I'll take you one further, guys. And my whole angle or framing I was going to take for talking about this movie is a little bit undercut by that incredibly interesting point you just made, Abby, about the wider context and how that may have led to a lot of its popularity. But I believe that in like a metaphysical sense, that opening of that door from the black and white cabin that's been thrown into the tornado, and Dorothy gets up with Toto and opens the door slowly into this world of vibrant color is a metaphorical birth of modern American cinema, because this movie is such a leap, technologically speaking, spectacally speaking. We've been lucky enough now that we've put in the work from the start of the Oscars, 1927 to now 1939, that I think you can definitively say we have entered a new level through that process of walking through that door. Because just as you said, Sarah, I got goosebumps. It was really something special. And although we've seen color movies up to this point, that element has not been utilized in the story way, the way it was here. And it was so affecting. I mean, I was just on like cloud nine for that whole scene where she's in the village with all the munchkins and the witch and everything. You know, I'm like an adult man, like it's a children's movie, whatever, but I was so affected by the appearance of it and the joy of that environment. It was magical. It's the only way to express it. This movie is a great early example of the magical capacities of filmmaking. It was really special, really special.
Yeah. Truly a special movie. And also in terms of color as part of the narrative, I feel like they also did that with the songs and the music in this, which we haven't really seen in other musicals. So I feel like this also evolved that element of film to some degree.
Yeah, it's not just someone just singing a song randomly in the middle of the movie to like, no, this is actually like important to the context of the movie.
Yeah, important to the context of the movie and leaning into the fantastical elements where it is diegetic, but it's treating the audience as you're in on it too. Like we are a character in the world learning these characters and learning everything, and we're along for the journey as well, which again, we see later more and more in musicals, that kind of storytelling through song. But prior to this, we've just seen like a lot of stage style things. But I think this is the first time that we actually have advancing of the plot and motivations being revealed from the musical numbers.
Yeah.
It was very, very cool. Which, speaking of musical numbers, obviously Over the Rainbow, just beautiful, so powerful, especially coming from Judy Garland and knowing all of what she had to go through in Hollywood and in MGM as well. Like, I can't help but whether or not this was really there for her, but just the song itself is such a like longing for a better place and for happiness while being in herself like a darker place. I was like, man, I can't help but think that it was very meaningful. Obviously, it became very, very tied to her throughout her life. And I imagine that that could be frustrating as a performer. You hear all the time of performers who are like, they get tired of their most popular songs. But anytime that I've heard her perform it, whether it was like shortly after this movie or towards the end of her life, I feel like she just killed it every time and sang it so genuinely and soulfully that some of her performances even make me like tear up. So just like, damn, what a song. And I can go into obviously some of the Louis B. Mayer abuses, which I think we should touch on.
I think we should do a Louis B. bonus episode in general.
I will say we'll have an opportunity to talk about this so much when we watch the Judy Garland A Star Is Born, which I'm sure is going to happen. But yeah, I think it's important context, right?
Important context, because like this is the first time we're seeing her and this is kind of her breakout, because she's still in her formative years. At this point, she's 16.
She looks young.
Yeah, she started in the industry even younger than that, mostly in like just singing numbers.
Yeah, she's like from a vaudeville family, right?
Yeah, she's from a vaudeville family and was signed to MGM very young. And her dad passed away when I think she was like 12 or 13. And Louis B. Mayer almost became like a surrogate father figure, which as we know, Louis B. Mayer is like the last person that you want in that type of role, because he fully just used it to manipulate her and essentially groomed her to always be looking for his approval. So he would alternate between criticizing, like he called her his little hunchback because she was petite and had scoliosis. And they consistently would comment about her weight, like making sure she wasn't getting too big, quote unquote, for the camera. So they strictly monitored her meals, basically starved her with small portions, which gave her long-term body image issues. And then started giving her like energy supplements to help curb the hunger for her long filming days. So then she couldn't sleep. So they gave her sleep aids. So they just kept her overly medicated and dependent on various drugs. And meanwhile, Louis B. Mayer would consistently praise her talent, but criticize her looks and physicality. So it just kept her in this feeling of never being enough. And a lot of biographers will say we see those formative years just impacting the trajectory of her life right from there. So we probably will see more of it by the time she is an adult in A Star Is Born, but it all kind of started here.
So sad.
Yep.
I know, like, that kind of like the inescapability of the studio system that we've talked a little bit about in terms of like adult stars and their contracts, but like even more so for children actors at the time, because so not only was she under contract, but also one of the things for child actors at the time is you would have a studio school. So you would go to school on the studio lot. So it's just like, this is your entire life is within this ecosystem.
Yeah. For her graduation, she was really excited about it and had like picked out a nice dress because she was actually very close friends with Margaret Hamilton, the woman who played the Wicked Witch in this movie.
And she was great.
She was so good. But speak about a long death scene. All right. She's trying to steal Betty Davis's crown over here. I'm melting. Yeah, just like how melt faster. But she apparently kind of almost like a motherly figure to Judy Garland. So Judy Garland was very excited about the graduation, showed Margaret the dress that she had picked out, but Louis B. Mayer, instead of allowing Judy to walk, scheduled some sort of tour for her and Mickey Rooney, so she missed it. And Margaret Hamilton reportedly called Louis B. Mayer and just chewed him out for like doing that to her. And I was like, she's the good witch, actually. Yeah. So yeah, the Louis B. Mayer just controlled this girl's life.
Just what a comically evil man.
Yeah.
Speaking more about the witch, I love when Dorothy is captured and she's looking in the crystal ball and she sees her Auntie M.
The RGB crystal ball.
Yeah. And she sees Auntie M. She's like, Auntie M's in the crystal ball, like, Dorothy, where are you? And Dorothy's like, Auntie M, I'm right here. And then the screen flashes to the witch and she's like, like, your Auntie M wasn't even real.
You're like, idiot.
That was so funny.
Yeah, that was good. Apparently there was supposed to be a reprise of Over the Rainbow in that sequence where Dorothy's like trapped. And according to like behind the scenes cast and crew got so emotional during it that it made most everyone cry.
Keep it then.
Yeah. I think they thought it was too somber because by this point it's more about like the whimsical journey. But I would have loved to see that.
Well, just a great message for kids and just like, find the good in you and appreciate the people in your life and be open to new friendships. I mean, just a really great story for everyone. And as you kept pointing out while watching it, like Toto, great dog. I mean,
Toto's so cute. Great
Toto, a vindication of using live animals.
What a great rat creature of a dog. I love him.
Obsessed with Toto. Like literally, he was a scene stealer for me.
I was always looking. They're skipping down the road. I'm like, where's Toto? Is Toto okay?
I think in my brain, I had like, because when you're thinking of things that you like watch a lot as a kid or whatever, like you have a tendency to like up-res them.
Yeah.
And especially when it's something like this where it's like there's so many images of like Dorothy and Toto and that kind of thing. And so when I started watching, I was like, Toto is so much more of a like scrungly rat dog than I
love
remember him being.
So
and
much.
He's perfect.
I would die for him.
He's great.
That is my favorite type of dog at the end of the day, is just like looks like he got pulled out of a dumpster. I'm like, I will
so
die
we know
for you.
the two things that would have made
Holocaust.
this movie even better would be if they had kept that reprise of Somewhere Over the Rainbow in that scene. And then if they had, like you pointed out, Sarah, when she wakes up back in Kansas, if it was still in color, I think that would have been a great capstone message to she has learned and has a new outlook on her circumstance.
Right.
That would have been cool.
Yeah, I can see the argument for that.
Yeah, that was definitely what I walked away from it feeling. I also learned, and it totally makes sense, and I feel like, Jake, you'd kind of commented on this during the movie as well, but Wizard of Oz, very important in the LGBTQ community, especially at this time and through like the 80s and 90s. Yeah, exactly. Friends of Dorothy, so coded phrase so that people in the queer community could identify each other. And obviously that was used because homosexuality was illegal at the time. But totally makes sense because, like, to your point, Jake, in terms of good messages for kids, in terms of all of these different characters and personalities and just like accepting and loving each other. There's that. But even the journey itself with all of these people from different walks of life, you can kind of see it as a journey of self-acceptance because the wizard ultimately, he has no powers. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't change anything. The characters just learn that they had whatever thing they felt they were lacking all along, or, should just accept and love themselves. And you can also see the going from small town Kansas, sepia / black and white, very more like rigid small town life, to this Technicolor, beautiful, fabulous existence. The song itself, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, like there's just a lot in there, I think, to identify with and feel like there might be something better for people who are different. So I can definitely see that. Great, just lovely movie in any way that you look at it, except looking at the background of how Judy Garland was treated. But barring that, like apart from that.
You're totally right. A timeless theme. I think it parallels the life experiences of a lot of folks that are born in really repressed flyover states, shall we say, who take that leap, go out west or to the coast in the east and meet all these zany people, but ultimately find their true families. Wonderful message.
Yeah.
All right.
Are we ready to talk about our next movie?
Sure.
Ready.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington follows Jefferson Smith, a broadly unqualified local hero who is appointed to replace a dead U.S. senator. Hand-picked with the hope that he'll be too bumbling to sniff out the corruption at the heart of his fellow state senator's work, Smith instead uncovers the plot with the help of his politically savvy but jaded secretary, Clarissa Saunders. When he's metaphorically stabbed in the back and framed for being the mastermind behind the same corrupt real estate scheme he meant to expose, Smith filibusters his way to reaffirming American values, proving his innocence, and winning Saunders' heart. Yes, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is yet another Frank Capra movie about the strength of the dream at the core of the concept of America, and how much a difference can be made by one good man determined to live out those ideals. But plot twist! Capra seems to have been dosed with a shot of pessimism. While the hallmarks of his past movies are all here, he appears to have come to the conclusion that actually there is such a thing as people who are outright reprehensible and unredeemable. Thank God Jimmy Stewart is here to sort the good guys from the bad ones for the average citizen.
Yeah, that's such a good way to frame it. And I think circling back to what I said from the outset, obviously this is a foundational movie in terms of the popular imagination about what it means to be a citizen and to participate in our self-governance, formally speaking. That's what we tell ourselves. And this is kind of the origin story for, I think, the way a lot of adults still today think about the way the government works and everything. But I do think it, to some extent, was a little redemptive for me with Capra, because I was at my wit's end with Capra after last year. I think this is just a well-made movie. I think that the cast is really stacked. I was super impressed by Jean Arthur, although now I'm thinking in terms of the points you've been making so far this year, Abby, about the female characters, and I do think you could make the case that she is really just kind of helping this male character actualize, and that's very true in this case, but I liked her performance.
I do think that there's something to be said about, just before we get away from that topic, for the most part, I think that is true, that I feel like Saunders could have more to do. But there's something that happens in this movie which they could have chosen not to give to her, that they give to her, which is that, so there's this whole corruption plot that's going on in the background, and Smith, Jimmy Stewart's character, is kind of at the edge of it, but he's not going to quite get there, right? But they make the choice to have Saunders be the person who shoves it in his face as she's leaving, versus it would have been so easy for her to walk out and him to find that information because it's like the first time he has to do his own paperwork or something like that. So they make the reveal of that and like the driving force of that all her responsibility, which I think is the best possible way to do this, right?
I think this is the best female Frank Capra character that I can think of so far. You know, the thing that was impressive to me in watching is I had never seen it. And in my head, it was just this principled man who overcomes the injustice and everything. But it was really her all along. Even during his big 25-hour filibuster, he is looking to her the whole time and she's passing him notes and everything. And it sucks that in that cultural context, it had to be a man leading with everything just for the sake of the way the expectations were. But you really see in this movie, and I give Capra some credit, that she is the brains of the operation, shall we say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I just want to circle great cast of character actors. I just want a real quick rundown. Guy Kibbe as the governor. It's not a huge role, but we love him from early on. We've got that big guy that played Anthony Sr. in Capra's last movie, who I really liked, with the glasses, playing the party boss, corrupt guy, James Taylor, who's running their state secretly. But most importantly, we've got the great Claude Rains, who I just love. As we've said, he is so versatile. I knew from the second I saw him as the Marquis in Anthony Adverse, that batshit movie. He is a boy to watch. He's going places, this Claude Rains.
Crazy to me that you clocked Claude Rains' abilities as an actor from Anthony Adverse, because I walked away from Anthony Adverse like, this guy's such a ham. And then now I'm just like truly learning the error of my ways. I enjoyed his performance in that, but I thought that like, this man will never go anywhere sort of thing, you know? And now I'm just like, oh my God, he's so good and so versatile. That's crazy.
It didn't make a ton of sense that there's a British guy as a U.S. senator, because is he attempting an American accent? I don't know, but he sounds British to me, but oh well.
Yeah. Fun thing when they mentioned that Jimmy Stewart, a.k.a. Mr. Smith, needs to convince the whole Senate. And it's like, oh, I need to convince 96 men. Just a fun reminder that this is before Hawaii and Alaska were states still.
Yeah.
So.
You know what's deeply funny to me about this movie? Is it made everyone angry. The U.S. government hated it. The overseas government hated it. They were like, this demeans the nobility of the U.S. governing body. Also, somehow Hitler's Germany also hated it. Like, it made literally everyone mad, which is
inviting
so
everyone
funny.
to the party at that point. Well, the U.S. Senate has long been imagined as this almost like aristocratic body. It's essentially the U.S. version of the House of Lords in the U.K. And ultimately, it's had oftentimes a very conservative impact on our nation's ability to progress. But that's for another podcast. But I can imagine that being the case because, again, just go back to what we were saying before. American ideology, your idea of yourself as a citizen being formulated in this time. And it's just interesting to watch. You know, it's not perfect. There's things about it that I would say, well, that's problematic, or that's not very progressive, or that's overly idealistic. But the process of watching that unfold was really interesting to me.
John Cassavetes, who is like a notable director, actor, creative from the 60s, 70s, etc. My Dinner with Andre. There's a quote from him that I think is, especially since we're talking about this year being like planting seeds and that kind of thing. There's a famous quote from him that says, maybe there really wasn't an America. Maybe it was only Frank Capra.
Wow, that's a great quote. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't agree it's good, but it's like true, you know, popular imagination.
Just like how much.
this vision.
He's like formed that perception of what America, the ideas at the core of it were, whether or not that was actually true.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think this was like the evolved version of Mr. Deeds Goes to Town.
That's a great comparison.
It even had like a lot of similarity in the supporting cast as well, except instead of Wall Street shareholder, whoever people, we had all of the people behind senators' money and that kind of corruption instead.
I also just think a really interesting like evolution, I think, of Frank Capra's kind of sensibilities, like kind of quietly happening in the background in terms of, oh, there are really actually bad people. And also, you know, Grandpa, who was anti-socialist in the last movie, but in this, we're going to create a boys camp by basically collecting a tax from people.
So trying to create a national boys' town.
Actually, taxes can do good things.
Right.
He's the patron saint of the median American voter. All these contradictions, and they're trying to find their identity. And in Capra's mind, that's what's beautiful about America. For those of us on the left, it's very frustrating from time to time. But you see it in spades in his work. But a couple things I just want to mention. Thankfully, and I did take this note, the Senate president was a messy bitch whom loved drama. Because if not for that, none of this would have transpired. He's just letting this go and making the decision to let everybody go wild. And in the end, he's really the factor, him and Gene, that allow it to be successful. But I love the way Capra also has James Taylor sitting at the end in an inconspicuous way of the party boss table when they introduce Mr. Smith, and it's that big function in their home state. It's like, that's how power really works. You know, the guy who's really in charge is not at the head of the table or in the front and center. He's off to the side, and he's got informal power. And then I loved the way when the state descends basically into civil war while he's doing this filibuster, this unprecedented action. You're seeing the camera pan to his home state where all his loyal Boy Scout friends are trying to use their scout paper to spread the word about what he's actually doing, fighting corruption. And then you've got
getting
Taylor's
run off the road.
That's what I was going to say. Taylor's got all these goons who work for his own papers. There's one scene where the boys are in like a cart, and they're just like all these 12-year-old boys like, Mr. Smith is great, Mr. Smith. And then you've got this bus of gangsters that just like plow into this car. And it didn't like show what happened, but in my mind, I'm like, they ran over that cart and killed those boys. It looked like. So it was just crazy.
The return from that scene was essentially just like, oh, boys are getting hurt over this. So they didn't say killed, but I'm like, though they were in a cart and they got ran off the road, like smashed into by a car.
I was screaming.
Like, my note there was like, damn, they crashed right into those kids. Like, that was crazy.
Mine is, why are kids driving a car? I was like, oh wait, they're not anymore.
Oh no. The one thing, definitely watching this, Jake just
get a little delayed.
The one thing definitely that felt kind of silly watching this at this point, still in the middle of a government shutdown, which has broken all previous records, was just like, imagine it being unfathomable that a rich dude could influence and own a politician when, like, just look around, at the current state of America. I was like,
Capper, come back.
we need a Mr. Smith. And actually what we need is, because Claude Rains at the end of the movie is initially going to try and take the easy way out and then instead reveals the whole truth. Imagine if people had integrity. Crazy.
I don't have to imagine. His name is Zorhan Mamdani. Don't clip this and use it against me later if he turns on us.
Okay. Well, I'm right. It just, the timing of it felt.
Such a good point to make.
Yeah.
All right. Are we ready to talk about our next movie?
Yes.
Now that we've talked up America.
Yeah.
All right. So our next movie is Ninotchka, which sees the return of director Ernst Lubitsch with yet another romantic comedy centered on identity politics featuring a horn dog Frenchman, or at least a guy living in France. When three bumbling Soviet-Russian agents fumble the sale of royal jewels confiscated during the revolution, Ninotchka Yakushova arrives in Paris to see their mistakes corrected. However, her Bolshevik ideals are compromised when she meets the debonair Leon. Despite her better judgment, Leon being the very man who set a legal battle over the jewels in motion, Ninotchka is swayed by his charm and ultimately decides that capitalism ain't so bad. A fluffy comedy of manners that makes good use of Greta Garbo's fantastically severe face, Ninotchka fails to really explore the different perspectives of its characters in favor of focusing on the pleasures of life that are really important, which seem to only be mostly attainable if you're wealthy and well-connected enough to enjoy them, but
This is the movie that I felt the most conflicted about this year. And I think about this movie as two different movies.
Was like based on that really ugly hat, right?
Oh my God, that's another movie with an ugly hat. Oh my God.
That was, I'm glad you mentioned that. I have in my notes, elf hat, link hat, or whatever. But The first half of this movie, I loved. I thought that Ninotchka's performance, or Greta Garbo, I should say, performance was hilarious. It is zinger after zinger. Every line, her whole persona is not something we've seen before. We've seen other female actors inch toward this. I think that Bette Davis is a great example, Katharine Hepburn, of women not afraid to come off a little masculine if they're asserting themselves in a scene. But man, Ninotchka is a powerhouse. She is just slapping everybody down around her with their witticisms and her kind of spectrum-y, like ultra-Soviet loyalty and everything. But I do not like the change that they make with her. I think it's like so sudden and so out of place, and she gets dumbed down into this little almost ditzy girlfriend character. They have that very funny scene where he gets her to laugh by falling down after all his failed attempts, and I love that. But then for me, the movie really takes a nosedive. She becomes kind of this flaky person with no clear motivation other than that ultimately I want to like be with this man. And
that
it's a real
capitalism
loss.
isn't quite so bad. If
that
it
as
means
well.
Sometimes
I
you can wear
touch
some
on
pretty
that.
dresses and
Again, capitalism is about champagne and pretty dresses.
Right.
Which definitely everyone in the capitalist system is getting to enjoy, right?
every single
Right.
person. Yeah,
Every
we're
single
not-
person
Yep.
in the Great Depression is drinking champagne and wearing cool dresses, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And everyone in the Soviet Union is starving. Let's not talk about the context of what it was like before the Soviet Union took over.
Right.
That's for
Yeah,
another discussion.
literally selling serfs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine, though, because the whole premise of this is that the entire country is going to starve if they're not able to like make a deal on these jewels or whatever. And imagine using the hunger of a population as a bargaining tool for political
Yeah, weird.
gains. Imagine.
We just can't get away
That's
from contemporary.
So evil. I know, no, we really can't. But okay, but going back, Greta Garbo's performance in this, I loved her so much. As you're
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah,
Jake, in
yeah.
the like when she's in full kind of stereotypical Russian mode, very like flat intonation, robotic responses, that compared to Leon's attitude, like the juxtaposition between those
Yes.
two. So
Yeah.
good
Lovely.
and so
But I will
funny.
say, imagine if Leon was played by Maurice. This
No,
would have
literally,
been one of the
the-
most
yes.
powerful movies ever.
Oh my God. Literally, my first note in all caps is, where's Maurice? And then as soon as like Leon was actually introduced and you kind of know his character, I was like, Maurice was made for this
Oh
role.
my God, the two of them
this is
together.
like, this longs for Maurice.
If she hadn't been bimbofied and if he was played by Maurice,
Yeah.
this could have been a great movie. And or we know we like Ernst Liebes's direction. I won't argue with that. Really funny, got a great sense of humor, great sense of camera work. But yeah, I mean, her whole shtick. I started writing down her zingers and then I just had to give up because there were so
Yeah.
many. Your type will soon be extinct.
There will be fewer Russians, but they will be better Russians.
Yeah. I also just liked in the sequence where literally she's just trying to get directions to the Eiffel Tower and he obviously is hitting on her, but she's giving him absolutely nothing, but he just keeps going and her just like, must you flirt? And finally, when he's like confessing his love after the Eiffel Tower and he's like, is there any possible way, Ninotchka, that you would feel the same? And she's like, we are already quite sympathetic. It's like so funny. Just again, the juxtaposition. So love affair, not actually made for Maurice. Ninotchka, absolutely
Yes,
made for Maurice.
yes.
And I feel like I just wish that he had been in this one. I do agree, second half, not as good, not only because of the ugly hats, but I could watch like the first half easily extended into more scenes.
Yeah.
I'd seen this movie before and I remembered being like kind of hot or cold on it and watching the beginning. I was like, why didn't I like this movie? And then we got to the back half and I was like, oh, right.
Yeah. So when I was trying to do a bit of research on this movie, trying to find some fun trivia facts for everyone, apparently this was the movie that Arnold Schwarzenegger studied when he was trying to find his character for Red Heat. Which I thought was so funny. Like literally just trying to emulate Greta Garbo in this movie.
Oh my God. She's like the Terminator.
Yeah. And I was like, oh shit, I can see it. This stuck
That's
with
wonderful.
him. So good.
I was thinking Ivan Drago from Rocky, but that's a good
That's
point.
so funny.
How about go to bed, little father. We want to be alone.
Yeah.
Or you
Which
could
I
be
think
a
was
good
supposed
case
to be
study.
a wink to the like I want to be alone from the Grand Hotel. which became a famous line for her, which is very cute. And I'm glad we saw this movie because her performance in Grand Hotel didn't really do anything for me, but definitely see her appeal much more in this movie.
Yeah, I just wish there's such a good kernel of goodness here, but there's a little bit of nuance here, right? As a socialist myself, I'm like, I like the movie Death of Stalin. You got to be able to laugh at yourself. This was a very brutal time to live in the Soviet Union, no doubt, height of Stalinism. But Lubitsch is kind of critiquing both ways of life to some extent, and even in some of the dialogue, you see them acknowledging like the plight of the working class, or her going into the bathroom, stirring up a potential strike among the bathroom workers they reference. But his whole thing is like love and individual self-fulfillment that transcends politics. And it's like, yeah, like the great point you guys just made. If you're rich, if you have the luxury to be able to prioritize that, but it's so detached from reality. And the insidious thing is when that is so ubiquitous in our media, it contributes to, I think, that norm of blaming yourself when your circumstances are not good and not examining structural conditions and context. Grandpa from You Can't Take It With You, I think, would love this movie. Put it that way. Oh, and I have one zinger to say because people held it against me. Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi minister of propaganda, loved this movie. He did, literally. He told everybody to watch it. So,
it is also apparently one of John Ford's favorite movies. So
incredible.
Very similar.
What choices people make. All right. Are we ready to move on to our last nominee that did not win the Oscar?
To the last one. Okay.
All right. Of Mice and Men follows two Depression-era field workers, George Milton and the intellectually disabled Lenny Small, who hope to one day realize the dream of having their own farm. When they are hired on at a ranch, the two become entangled in a conflict with Curly, the dick-swinging son of the boss. Jealous of his wife flirting with the field hands, Curly runs roughshod over the ranch and everyone in it, and eventually gets into a physical altercation with Lenny that leads to injury. While George, Lenny, and various farmhands are determined to come together to make their dream of a better life a reality, that struggle for companionship and independence comes into violent conflict with a social order that only values those who can be made useful and thrives on discrimination. Of Mice and Men, directed by All Quiet on the Western Front's Louis Milestone, asks whether the American dream is attainable and what power really means. It explores the predatory nature of a society made up of haves and have-nots, and how ultimately those who suffer the most significant tragedies in these situations are the ones who have the least capacity to escape it.
I thought this was a wonderful film. I had only ever seen the one from the 90s with Gary Sinise and John Malkovich, and my only memory of it was when they showed it in my sophomore year classroom. Everyone busted out laughing when he shot John Malkovich at the end.
Oof.
And so I didn't have the emotional weight in my mind, but watching this one, it was really moving. And you're so right. This is so much in the DNA of this, the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl and unemployment. It was so of the times. I just loved it.
This was the version that we watched in high school. So I had seen this version before. So potentially because of that, I wasn't as engaged as I might have otherwise have been. But part of that also, which I think is telling to how powerful a lot of the narrative is that I remembered most of it, right? And I think the book is well worth reading today. It's relatively short as well, but between the 90s version and this original version, highly recommend this one over it. It is more minimal, but I think because of that, it relies on kind of the acting talent and the chemistry of the cast, which was very much here, I felt, between Lenny and George and Candy as well.
Everyone in this.
Candy,
everyone,
great. Candy was probably my favorite.
You want to know a fun fact about Candy that I found out? This man literally was 38. Playing a 70-year-old man. So obviously, like, we joke throughout watching these movies that it's like, oh, this man was actually 12 or like 16 years old, by the way, because of how much, like, I don't know. To me, it's like smoking, no sunscreen, a hard life, whatever, will age you. But when I found out he was 38, I was like, damn, like, this is absolutely wild. But I loved Candy so much in this movie, and I just wanted to protect him at all costs.
I wanted to kill his dog so bad. It was bizarre.
If anyone tried to do that with any pet that I had, like, I'd I'd kill them. I don't
Imagine
know. Like,
if they're talking about
go
Mr.
away.
Chips. I'd fucking cut their head off.
Exactly. I do in some ways, though, watching it now, I felt like you could make an argument that this is almost the original movie about the male loneliness epidemic because there was just so little connection and so much competition. Like you said, haves and have-nots, and everyone's scrambling for these scraps and holding so much animosity towards one another because of it.
Yeah.
That I just felt like that through line. It's just interesting how in difficult economic times, that seems to be something that pops up again, right? Because it is an expectation where, particularly in cultures like the United States, where it is a little bit more, you need to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and be successful on your own, then that creates that environment where for men who aren't able to do it, but who are expected to do it, they end up in this just like really negative cycle and environment. And that also bleeds over, obviously, into the women. We only have one real female character in this, May, Curly's wife.
It's the weakness of this movie.
Yeah, but we see just like how unhappy that situation is for everyone involved, that lack of connection in there. But yeah, Lenny, Lon Chaney Jr.
He's big guy.
He was, but because I looked up his height, I was like, he must have been like 7 feet tall. But apparently he was also wearing like special shoes that increased his height by 6 inches. Okay. And I was like, oh, they must have been like Mae West shoes, essentially for the shoes.
You see his bottom half is just like a beautiful gown.
Exactly. You can never see his feet for some reason. I don't know. But this is one where I think I would recommend book over movie, but I did think the movie was well done and had my favorite opening that we've seen so far. I think this is the first time that we've seen like a scene before the opening title sequence, and the way that the quote about "of mice and men" shows up on the door when they close it, and then it fades into just the title. I was like, damn, that's cool. That was really cool.
Really thoughtfully done.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of your great point on the male loneliness thing, I love that scene from Candy where he is reminiscing about it's that thing of futility, right? It's like, how do you keep going when it just seems so futile? And Candy talks about how, he spent $15 one night, a whole week's pay to go out on the town, and he talked to a pretty girl and had a nice drink at a club. And maybe that was stupid in the moment, but he's had a lot of weeks in his life and he doesn't remember any of them, but you can bet damn sure he remembers that one from 25 years ago when he splurged that one night. And man, that's just like so relatable.
Yeah, and have that moment of connection and happiness. Yeah. I didn't want to forget just to mention Lee Whipper as Crooks, the African-American man that is just like
that was a
totally
great
siloed on his own. What a phenomenal scene and character and performance, even within this really just fucked up structure and society. There's still this othering just because he is Black, and he cannot like participate in all of the same thing. Like it just, everything about that was so good and
terrific that the script like names it, right?
Yes.
Where it's not just
it's not
like
implied.
Where it's like I can't be there because I'm Black.
Because I'm Black.
Yes.
When he said that, it felt so cutting through so much innuendo so far and metaphor. He's because I'm Black. I can't. I'm even lower on the hierarchy than you, Lenny.
Yeah, and I kind of wrote down like outside of Within Our Gates, which was literally an Oscar Me show like created by a Black director, this was by far the best character and best scene that we've seen, acknowledging those things. Not a caricature, not a minstrel character, not a maid, not a saint, very much just like a real person who is acknowledging his own pain and his station in life that is thrust upon him solely because of the color of his skin. To me, that was the strongest scene in the movie. Powerful and good. And the actor was just, he knocked it out of the park for that.
The reason I love that scene was in the beginning, I was mad at him and I don't be mean to Lenny. He's this helpless, basically a child.
Yeah.
But by the end of it, the writing and the delivery, I was like, that's a good scene. I don't know.
Shout out also to how effective the score is. Like it's very, we watch a lot of these movies where like if we have a score, it is doing arguably too much sometimes. And this one, like it really stood out to me in the scene with Candy's dog, where the dog has left and the bunkhouse is kind of getting quiet because Candy is like in his bed waiting for the dog to get shot.
Great
And
scene.
the score in that sequence is so good because it's so understated and just has there's a slight dissonance to it, and it's just excellently done, and really adding so much to that scene instead of just being music.
It was nominated, but unfortunately Stagecoach won, which
Stagecoach stealing them all up.
Well, Gone with the Wind taking almost everything else, but
that fucking movie better be good. That's all I have to say. We'll soon find out. But yes, I just also want to highlight the guy who plays George.
Yeah.
He has a fantastic voice, and that's something I always try to take note of. And I looked him up. You know who he plays way later in life? I don't know if you guys know this movie very well, but it's a famous movie called Rocky. It's very big in the greater Philadelphia area. He plays Mick, the trainer in Rocky. You see it in the face now in your mind's eye?
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
I can see it when he's telling Lenny to fight back. I can now interpose Stallone instead.
Isn't that so cool? And a very powerful performance, know.
Yeah,
he's
really,
faced
really
with
good.
so much. People like that. They give a lot in life very thanklessly, On a lighter note, can we talk about Curly? Just what a loser that guy was. Just walking into every room. Have you guys seen my wife? Have you guys seen my wife?
And then was just awful to her when she actually wants to go out and do something.
Yeah, all she wants to do is go to the movies. I already saw that with my friends.
He's the worst.
That I will say, I think it was a weakness was her character. You get where she's coming from by the time she gives her spiel about her past, but she's so kind of infantilized that she seems like
she kind of gets a lot less to do and is given kind of considerably less range than everyone else.
Very.
But I shamefully haven't read the novella, so I would be curious if she gets more to do or is more developed in the novella.
No, not that I remember.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's an accurate adaptation then.
I didn't like that she was, and again, you shouldn't put expectations on a female character that you don't put the same ones on the male character, but she was kind of using the male characters who were lower on the pecking order than her in her own fight with her husband, and it's that's fucked up. But I know she was trapped, basically. She was a prisoner.
Yeah, she is, I guess, technically socially above them, but I don't know that she feels like she has more power in her situation.
That's true.
She's getting bossed around from all sides. I can't remember the name of the head ranch hand guy.
Slim.
Yeah, Slim.
Who's cool.
Yeah, he's really the person who has the most
Informal.
unspoken power. Yeah, informal power.
De facto.
And he rebuffs her and that kind of thing. So it's I think...
You're right.
I feel like she doesn't actually have any power whatsoever in this movie.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I was just trying to have a hot take, but now I sound sexist, so I'm going to retract that take. All right. Wow.
Well, we did it. Anything else to say about any of these movies?
Other than very strong year. And now it's time to watch the winner. The very, very long movie. Gone with the Wind.
Everybody, welcome back to Lights, Camera, Accolade, and boy, do we have a doozy on the second half today. We have just watched probably the most epic film that we've seen so far, a film that most of you, I should hope, especially if you've been listening to us this long, will recognize. It's Gone with the Wind, the Best Picture winner for the year 1939. We just watched all 3 hours and 45 minutes of it, so I am going to try to do a concise overview just to get everybody up to speed on what happened in this, I would say, groundbreaking movie. Gone with the Wind follows the trials and tribulations of one Scarlett O'Hara, a beautiful young Southern belle living in a relatively carefree life of leisure on her family's plantation of Tara in Georgia. It's the eve of the American Civil War, and the primary concerns of the comfortable slave-holding gentry like the O'Haras seems to be balls, barbecues, and feats of gallantry and romance. Certainly, that's the mentality of Scarlett's many young male suitors who constantly compete for her attention and favors. As all this seemingly idyllic world rolls on, enslaved Black Americans carry out all of the agricultural and domestic work in Southern society, including Scarlett's dedicated and bombastic maid and caregiver, Mammy. We learn that Scarlett is utterly infatuated with her childhood friend, a young gentleman named Ashley Wilkes at a nearby plantation. Ashley is thoughtful and gallant, but he's been promised in marriage to another young woman, the kindly Melanie Hamilton. When Scarlett catches Ashley alone at a large party at his family's plantation, she implores him to abandon his engagement to Melanie and marry her instead. Ashley tries to turn her down gently, explaining that while he cares deeply for Scarlett, he truly loves and wants to marry Melanie. But Scarlett reacts violently, throwing a vase against the wall after Ashley leaves the room. This seemingly awakens another man who is resting out of view for their whole conversation. He's a debonair and worldly man named Rhett Butler, and he tells the still emotional Scarlett that he admires her passion and intends to win her heart for himself one day. She brushes him off. Soon the Civil War begins. Young Southern gentlemen rush off to enlist to fight against the Northern Yankees and defend their slave society. One longtime admirer of Scarlett, an impulsive young relation of Ashley's fiancé named Charles, proposes to Scarlett before he leaves for the front. Seeing her opportunity to ingratiate herself in Ashley's family and potentially make him jealous, Scarlett agrees to marry this simple man she has no feelings for. The war starts to go poorly for the South, and Scarlett receives news that her new husband, Charles, has been killed in battle, potentially relegating her to a life of solemn widowhood, unsuited to her vivacious character. Scarlett decides to move to Atlanta to live with her aunt, hoping to find new social opportunities there. At a war charity ball, the now famous and wealthy naval privateer Rhett Butler sweeps Scarlett off her feet to dance, shocking all the disapproving Southern gentry present. They disapprove of that type of behavior from a widow like Scarlett. Rhett tries to woo Scarlett on this and other chance meetings in Atlanta, but she constantly refuses him. Her romantic sights remain set on the unavailable Ashley. After a brief visit from the front, during which time he again rejects Scarlett's determined advances, Scarlett agrees to help care for Ashley's pregnant love in Atlanta. By the Battle of Gettysburg, things are really going poorly for the South in the war. Atlanta is gripped in chaos as the Union General Sherman approaches the city, leaving devastation in his army's wake. Around this time, Melanie begins to go into labor, but Scarlett is unable to get medical attention because of the pressing needs of the returning injured soldiers to the city. Scarlett and her simple-minded house slave Prissy are able to successfully deliver Melanie's baby against all odds. As the city descends into fire and looting, Scarlett is forced to call on Rhett Butler for assistance in escaping the danger. Taking the women and the newborn infant on a horse and buggy, he successfully navigates them out of burning Atlanta and back to Scarlett's home of Tara. On the outskirts of her family's plantation, Rhett opts to leave his passengers and go to enlist with the Confederate Army and fight for their lost cause for the sake of honor. Before he does so, he plants a forceful kiss on Scarlett and renews his pledge to win her heart one day. Tara is in a ruin. All but several of the O'Hara family's most loyal slaves, including Mammy, have left, and the fields and mansion have been wrecked. Her father has been driven insane, her mother is dead, and her younger sisters are all ill. Scarlett musters up all the strength she has and defiantly vows to the heavens that she'll never go hungry again before setting about to salvage her home. Scarlett and the other residents of Tara, including Melanie and her newborn baby, struggle to make ends meet. Scarlett kills a marauding Union soldier who makes his way into their home looking for valuables to pillage. The women and Ashley, who's returned alive from the war, take up agricultural work that their slaves had previously undertook for them in the fields. But things continue to look bleak for the formerly slave-holding class as northern carpetbaggers implement various political reforms and begin buying up old plantation lands. Scarlett steadfastly refuses to sell, but is unsure of how to cover the new taxes being leveled on her family's estate. After Ashley again refuses to become romantically involved with Scarlett after an emotionally charged discussion and even a kiss in a barn, Scarlett opts to seek out financial assistance and sex, if need be, from Rhett Butler. It turns out Rhett is imprisoned with other defeated Confederates in Atlanta, awaiting judgment from Union authorities. Rhett sees through Scarlett's false seductive act during her visit and rejects her plea for money. She's again at a loss. That is until she successfully plots to steal the prospective husband of her younger sister, an older but financially secure businessman named Frank. Scarlett uses Frank's wealth to create a successful business using prison labor. She employs the wayward Ashley there as a manager, and they become prosperous. When she's shortly later attacked on a back road one night by robbers, a former slave of her family named Big Sam sees what's happening and intervenes to save her. Around this time, the Southern men in the region, including both Scarlett and Melanie's husbands, join a vigilante militia movement, ostensibly to restore order under the supposedly lawless rule of the Northern occupiers. During a raid one night, Frank is killed, and Ashley nearly is as well, if not for the quick thinking and intervention of Rhett Butler, who helps the family defect scrutiny from the authorities. Now a widow for a second time, Scarlett finally relents in the face of Rhett's determined proposals to marry her. Rhett points out that they're both essentially bad people and are thus suited to each other. For a time, Rhett and Scarlett appear to live happily, traveling to New Orleans and enjoying their wealth, until Rhett's faith in his wife is shaken when he realizes she's still secretly carrying a torch for Ashley. Rhett storms off one night to pay a visit to an old prostitute friend of his, but she convinces him to return to Scarlett and to give things another go. Scarlett soon becomes pregnant and gives birth to her and Rhett's beloved daughter, Bonnie. While Rhett takes to fatherhood and adores his daughter, teaching her to ride against the warnings of a cautious mammy, Scarlett continues to flirt with Ashley. One day, a social rival of Scarlett's catches her and Ashley embracing and begins to spread a false rumor that they're having an affair. Enraged, Rhett forces Scarlett to face consequences for her indiscretion by going to a planned birthday party for Ashley, one that Rhett opts not to attend himself. At the party, Scarlett is saved by a gracious and confident Melanie, who dispels talk of the affair by welcoming Scarlett lovingly. When Scarlett returns home, she finds Rhett drunk and belligerent. He gets physical and threatening with Scarlett, expressing his frustration that he can't convince her to love him the way she's always loved Ashley. He then carries her upstairs to their bedroom and rapes her. While Scarlett appears eager to reconcile with Rhett the next day, he tells her he's reached his wit's end. He's ready for a divorce. When Scarlett refuses him one, Rhett says he's leaving for England and bringing their daughter Bonnie with him to start a new life there away from Scarlett. The trip to England doesn't last long, as little Bonnie misses her mother and home. Rhett relents and brings the daughter he loves so much back to Tara. Well, Scarlett attempts to make nice with Rhett when they arrive, but Rhett wants none of it. When Scarlett reveals she's pregnant again by him, Rhett brushes the news off, enraging Scarlett. When she throws herself at her husband, she misses and falls down Tara's large central staircase, critically injuring herself and losing the new baby in the process. Rhett feels guilty by what happened and is convinced by the supportive Melanie to return to Scarlett, now recovering from her injury. As Scarlett and Rhett discuss the state of their marriage on Tara's patio, their daughter, Bonnie, rushes off to ride her pony against her parents' wishes. Bonnie's horse stumbles while attempting a jump, and the little girl is tragically killed in the process. By this point, Scarlett's marriage to Rhett is utterly ruined, with both parties casting cruel words and almost coming to blows with each other, to Mammy's distress. The dedicated Melanie, Ashley's stoic wife, comes to try and help them. Just as she convinces Rhett to finally leave the side of his dead daughter's body and allow Scarlett into the room, Melanie collapses, seriously ill. It's revealed that she'd become pregnant by her husband Ashley again, against the wishes of the doctors, who were concerned over the difficulty of her first earlier birth. On her deathbed, Melanie asks Scarlett to look after Ashley and their son after she's gone. She also stresses to Scarlett that Rhett still loves her. When Melanie dies and Scarlett immediately embraces Ashley, Rhett leaves the room. Scarlett sees plainly how heartbroken Ashley is over the death of his wife Melanie, and in that moment, she finally realizes she herself will never know that kind of love from Ashley. With this new insight, she rushes home to Rhett in the desperate hope of repairing their relationship one last time, but Rhett makes it clear that his well of love for Scarlett has long since run dry, and he leaves her alone a final time. Now fully on her own, the one source of comfort and strength Scarlett is able to find is in her family's plantation, Tara, which she recommits herself to defending. And so I ask you guys, what do you think about Gone with the Wind?
Well, I feel like partway through watching this, I kind of had the realization that the Academy definitely would have awarded Birth of a Nation an Oscar if they were around at that time. Because it's like, if all they're really looking at is technical achievement and not really caring about representation or harm done to groups that were still very much oppressed at this time, Birth of a Nation would have won the Academy Award for that year, for sure.
I think it's insanely damning that this pro-Confederacy propaganda movie is the highest grossing movie of all time.
Yeah, still adjusted for inflation. I'm going to be honest. So I had mostly, and this kind of speaks, I think, to how insidious a lot of the depictions and framing of this movie is, because I had mostly remembered this as the story of a stubborn, narcissistic woman and her tumultuous romance with Rhett Butler as she pines after Ashley, who's kind of useless throughout the movie. But rewatching it and seeing how much the idea of like the tragic, genteel South that was lost to those damn Yankees, how much that permeates through the entire movie was like, oh man. Okay, so this is 30% toxic romance novel and 70% The South Will Rise Again / apologia for it, which was little surprising to me from what I had remembered it as.
There's apparently a old script for Gone with the Wind was found. It had been kept by the casting director of the movie, despite David O. Selznick, the producer, having ordered basically any like old scripts destroyed, and bought by a film historian, David Vincent Kimmel. And it has evidence of a bunch of deleted scenes where topics of slavery and the Ku Klux Klan and like racial slurs and that kind of thing were considerably more overt in the movie and like considerably more brutal, because so much of this movie, like for anyone who hasn't seen it, is slavery like the actual word ever said? I don't know. It's all very much like it's a distant concept. Like the horrors of slavery are far removed from this movie. So there are versions of the script that were so much more explicit about how like brutally wrong these characters are and that kind of thing. But Kimmel, the historian, was saying, if not for David O. Selznick's choices to err on the side of white pacification, he could have altered the course of one of the most celebrated and disgraced movies ever made. And it's so marked to me that this movie is, like, we can talk a lot about how technically accomplished it is.
Sure.
But it's also like they threw almost $4 million at this. What other movies could have been that technically accomplished with that money? But this is the one that they chose to give it to. I don't know. It's rough.
It's frustrating to think about.
We were supposed to read this novel in middle school, and I'm gonna be honest, I didn't. I know there are deviations from the book, like a bunch of different plot points and more children with her other husband. I think with Frank, she has kids, but I was more curious about Margaret Mitchell's background because of how much, again, that image of the South is in this movie. So I was curious if that was due to her own upbringing. And I'm going to call this almost like loosely biographical about her family with some of her own maybe narcissism put into it. So pretty much she grew up in a family from the South. Her maternal great-grandpa did emigrate from Ireland and, become a slaveholder. In what was, by the time of like her grandparents' time, I think, second largest slave owning plantation in Georgia.
Cool.
So she is, directly related to that. And pretty much as she was growing up, that image of the South came from her mom taking her on tours through like all of the ruined plantations that Sherman's Sentinels had like destroyed and torched, and just grew up listening to everyone talk about the world that those people had lived in as such this secure world that was taken violently away from them. So that was her background.
Cool.
And the whole family, like, their estate, similar to Tara in this movie, was looted but not burned down. So that was the family estate all through the 1970s. So there's a lot of her family history woven through this. And then to my understanding, just she as a person, similar to Scarlett, was very flirtatious, had like 5 men engaged to her at one point. And on top of that, reportedly read like a lot of erotica. And I can feel that in this toxic romance novel vibe with Rhett Butler, with the like dubious consent in a lot of these scenes, in which he just kind of like, he takes what he wants sort of thing. So there's just like a lot of toxicity that I think comes from a very like personal lived experience of the author. So
I just have to think about the fact that this movie kept them in their family estate until the 70s.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
I think a lot of people probably look at this movie and go, well, we have to consider it in the time it was made and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And it's like, well, at the time it was made, the NAACP boycotted it, and also it has a long-standing effect in terms of, the person who wrote the book lived on a family estate until the 1970s.
Yep.
If the United Daughters of the Confederate don't have a Scarlett O'Hara shrine in their headquarters, I would be shocked. And it's just like there's so much in this movie that is still to this day propping up the whole lost cause aesthetic that I don't think you can look at this movie and be like, well, we have to look at it in the time that it was made without being like giant asterisk.
Right. Especially because through obviously doing this podcast, not only back in February did we watch Within Our Gates, so we know that there are other stories being told by Black filmmakers and Black actors, as well as even this year, the character of Crooks, right, in Of Mice and Men, acknowledging that overt racism and isolation. So it's like, this wasn't the representation of slavery and of its Black cast and characters did not have to be this way whatsoever, especially by 1939. But obviously America was still deeply racist in many ways at the time, still is to some extent. But I know the reactions from like African Americans at the time were somewhat split. I know it was boycotted by the NAACP, and its depiction of happy slaves and these tropey characters that were very palatable to white audiences was specifically called out by a lot of people, but simultaneously having these like larger roles, especially for Hattie McDaniel, who won the Oscar, as we've talked about before, the double-edged sword of getting more work and actually having larger roles in film, but then also at what cost. So I think the Black community was somewhat divided with that, including the actors themselves. But before having seen more movies from this time period, where to me this was just like, this was the only type of role that African American actors could get at the time, then I was like happy for Hattie McDaniel that she at least got recognized, even though, she sat at her segregated table during the Oscar ceremony, etc. But now knowing more, I'm just like, no, it didn't. It wasn't, that wasn't the
not
only
to
thing.
drag
totally.
Hattie either, because it was quite an achievement and wonderful performance, but famously, she was continually called on to take a more active advocacy role on behalf of other Black actors and Black people in general as a result of her status after becoming an Academy Award winner. And she steadfastly, for the most part, refused to do so throughout the rest of her life. So, it's just the choices we make, and you can't pass judgment, not fully, not being in that situation, but it speaks a lot to, I think, the way a lot of people compromised in the creation of this film.
I know she also had had a response to the NAACP, because I think the leader at the time, Walter White, had like openly accused. Oh, yeah, true. No relation to Breaking Bad. But he accused her of being an Uncle Tom. And she had that kind of famous quote of, well, I'd rather make $700 a week playing a maid than $7 being one. And additionally, kind of questioned his ability to speak on the behalf of herself and other Black people, because he was very light skinned and only like 1/8 Black. So again, that difference in your experience as someone who can't really pass in society as white, right?
So much complexity to that experience that, again, I can't pass full on judgment. I can only try to glean insights, but I'm so glad the two of you opened our discussion with acknowledging that, because I had never seen this movie before. And so I was trying to keep an open mind, and I was curious about the degree to which, you know, that would be glaringly obvious, that undercurrent of, as you say, kind of lost causeism and Confederate apologia. And it was obvious right out of the gates. And it almost feels like, as compelling and interesting as the romantic story is, which I am excited to talk more about, and that I frankly enjoyed. I really enjoyed the characters involved. It almost feels like the movie is more so a vehicle for that theme. And unfortunately, I think it plays into the idea that we've been touching on of the construction of American culture. Because here's the thing. You had this cataclysmic national conflict and war within living memory of a few people still alive at this time. They'd been very old, but it was relatively fresh. And you had to figure out, from the perspective of forming a nation state, a national identity, how to reintegrate that segment of the population into that national project. And I think this movie in part does that. I'm not saying it was planned in a back smoke-filled room, but these things happen organically in a meta way. And I think that the factors came together in such a way that Hollywood saw an opportunity, and there was this feeling of whatever happened in the past, here we are now, and we're about to face all these new challenges that seem to be so impending. So let's get everybody on board, and let's make sense of everything that's happened so far, good, bad, and ugly. And this is about the prettiest lipstick you can put on a pig that was the vicious, hierarchical slave society of the American South that I can fathom, and the aftermath of that, and this terrible retelling of the story of Reconstruction, which was a noble but largely aborted effort to really reshape the South in a more humanitarian way. And it's just so frustrating. There's so much complexity here. I mean, in a way, this movie is so American. I mean, we mythologize so much here, but that's not necessarily a compliment.
No. But it is just fundamentally American.
Yeah. But should we talk a little bit more about the characters and the romantic element of the movie?
I mean, the movie was nominated for basically every category and won most of them. Some, I think, definitely deserve, like Vivian Leigh, her performance as Scarlett. Phenomenal, like fantastic acting, great facial expression. She was relatively unknown at this time. So I think after this, obviously just completely propelled her to stardom in Hollywood.
It must be said, one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life. I saw her in A Streetcar Named Desire. She's a little older at that point, still very beautiful. But in this film, she is, like, every scene, she is just amazingly gorgeous.
Well, it's also in seeing her in Technicolor versus black and white. Usually it's kind of the opposite, but the blue eyes, they pop in this. And this is why I said earlier, you know, as a kid watching this, I was like, I didn't even notice Olivia de Havilland. Part of that is the styling. She is very
more
demure
meek,
and more meek versus Vivian Leigh's character, who is very fiery, very stubborn.
It's also just like a lot of meat on the bone for her in terms of like what she's given on paper to do with versus a bunch of other people in this movie, a bunch of other roles generally for women at the time. Like there's a lot available for her to work with, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because she is a despicable character. And I think her Her total like runtime of her scenes, to my understanding, is almost like 2 hours and 40 minutes with her performance. So she's like obviously the core of this movie. Oh, yeah. And I really do think she and Clark Gable really did sell how insufferable both of their characters were throughout. And we've seen Clark Gable play that type of character before in like San Francisco, to some extent Test Pilot. But in this one, I think it just fit so well in that kind of like scoundrel role that it was pretty iconic at the end of the day.
I mean, Clark Gable's always going to be Clark Gable, and he does Clark Gable well. It's like Harrison Ford. He's always Harrison Ford. If you like Harrison Ford, you're going to love him. Mm-hmm. But her performance, Vivian Lee's, I love the fact that you could see in her eyes the wheels turning. She reminded me a lot of Tony Soprano. I know we've made reference to the idea of the anti-hero and the main character who's not necessarily sympathetic, but I think she had that same personality disorder that manifests in a lot of cases of, what am I supposed to do to make everyone around me think that I am normal and good? Because at the end of the day, she's so consumed by her own desires and the things that she thinks will bring her happiness or fulfillment that she's like almost like sociopathic towards the people around her. And that was just so entertaining to watch, I have to say. And I think that Rhett thought he could tame her, and ultimately his powers of wealth and patriarchy were not enough. But a great performance, really great.
I think we also have to just call out the costuming.
Beautiful.
This was not gowns by Adrian. This was gowns by Walter Plunkett, I think was his name. Not
much
nearly
less marketable name.
Has Walter considered becoming just Walter?
Gowns
Definitely
by
not
Walt.
just Plunkett. But yeah, gowns by Walter. Vivian Lee's various dresses in this movie, I feel like, are also to some degree scene stealers. Not just the curtain dress, which is one of the more memorable scenes, but if just watching the fashion throughout, Rhett Butler is also a bit of a fashionista as well. So his costumes are great. I feel like they're almost a character on their own, just the various costuming and the way that the styles change over time.
Speaking of outfits, how about when they're really making money and Rhett hears Mammy talking, there's some ruffling. He's, lift up your skirt. And she's like, how dare you, Mr. Rhett? And then she does, and she's wearing a fine red dress underneath. So that was funny. But you're right. Just gorgeous. I could imagine, hosting a house party and just putting this movie on a big screen with no sound and music playing. And that would be some pretty nice ambiance, the visuals of this.
Yeah, I mean, it looks terrific.
Yeah. Also much more epic in scale than pretty much anything we've seen so far. And obviously, to Abby's point, that's the budget being put to work.
$3.9 million goes a long way.
Yeah. What would that be in today's money?
Get you a 2-bedroom in Northeast.
That's the inflation calculator.
So that's 90.
That's actually cheap compared to a lot of movies now.
Yeah.
Well, we have to consider the fact that only in the last 20 years have movies started to be we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars.
Borderline unprofitable industry at this point, the entertainment industry.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's okay. In a really short time, we'll have AI doing all our CGI, and then it'll become really cheap.
And all of our acting, too, eventually.
It's all profit, baby.
Well,
anybody got anything else they want to touch on? There's so much, really.
I feel like there is and there isn't.
Yeah. We could talk a lot about the technical stuff or how sweeping the score is or whatever, but yep, it's there.
Part of those things too is that we've seen those things evolve and come to fruition in this movie to all come together. But we've heard actually Max Steiner scores before, and we've seen the disaster movies of in old Chicago and San Francisco. So we've kind of seen all of the legwork that then came together for this 4-hour epic to happen. So almost in a way, I feel like when you view it truly in the context of its time, in where it lands in film history, it is very impressive. But it's not the same level of impressive as though this were the only movie from the 30s that you watch. Because as we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, just our preconceived notions of what movies from the 20s and 30s would be like we were very wrong, in terms of what they were actually capable of. So going in with those same incorrect assumptions and seeing Gone with the Wind, it's like, oh my God, how did they make this movie? But now at this point where we are, I'm like, we know how they made this movie and it is very impressive, but it's not quite as insane.
Yeah, it's not like a singular.
Like Abby pointed out, there's so much other awesome stuff out there that I just wish people knew more about, which we're kind of doing God's work by spreading the word about,
Mm-hmm.
If only the Oscars nominated the best movies in the year instead of what they wanted to advertise.
Yeah, when you frame it that way. And I think eventually they get closer to that, but certainly at this time, it's not the case.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the best movies of the year, unless we have other things to say about this, are we ready to give our recommendations from the 12th year?
Yeah, I think so. I think for my recommendations of movies from 39 that you should watch are Stagecoach, Wuthering Heights, Wizard of Oz, Of Mice and Men, and if you want an extra, do Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Fair.
Okay. There's one very important movie missing from your list, but that's okay.
She kept that powder dry. First half, she didn't want to get attacked. Well, I think it's easier this year. I'm going to do a 180. I know I'm always the one that takes the longest with this. And rather than focus on the ones that I would recommend, I'm going to focus on just the couple that I wouldn't. And for me, that is Dark Victory. Although I love Bette Davis and thought she delivered a knockout performance in this film, I just thought it was not necessarily a great movie. Watch the ending death sequence for just the, a historically histrionic sequence, I would say. But other than that, just kind of a weird movie, problematic in a lot of ways. And then I have to say, it kind of hurts to say because I just love the first half so much. But Ninotchka, I'm sorry, it really pissed me off. Like just with the way it framed, the politics of the time and the decision it made with her character, because she was such an impressive and interesting character in the beginning, and then they just make her and they bimbofy her into like a little girly girl, and it was just really lame when they did that. And this is borderline. I'm gonna say still watch it. And I love William Wyler, but I didn't really like Wuthering Heights that much. I don't know. I thought it was kind of not as dynamic as his other films, but I know it's important and there's a lot of good things about it. But when there's nobody that you really like in the movie, sometimes it makes it a little bit more of a drag. But all the other ones I would wholeheartedly endorse. I would say, this is a little bit of a spoiler for our next discussion, but I think for a good portion of these movies, if they had been released any other year, they would have been shoo-ins for Best Picture. Basically, all the ones that I haven't met. Love Affair, I liked. I know a lot of people didn't like. That probably isn't a Best Picture winner, but all the other ones that I haven't mentioned thereby endorsing could have won in any other year.
Yeah, I do think this is the strongest year that we've seen so far. So I do agree with Hollywood academics on that. So looking at the list, I think Stagecoach, I would recommend if you love Westerns. And even if you don't love Westerns, but you kind of want to see what they're all about or what set the groundwork for a lot of future Westerns, it's actually worth watching. Wuthering Heights, worth watching if you're in it for the gothic, dramatic romance that is also very toxic, which seemed to be a theme this year. Dark Victory, if you want to see a strong performance by Bette Davis. I don't know. I was kind of into it. Oh, and I did do a little bit more research last night after we were talking about the ethics in terms of her prognosis. Apparently, it wasn't until like 1979 that doctors had to give the prognosis to patients, which is absolutely insane.
Holy shit.
1979. Yeah, and still to this day, they don't have to, if they think like, oh, it's 6 months, they could give like a range. They could skirt around it. They don't have to give, if they think it will affect the patient's mental well-being.
Ignorance is bliss.
And that's what they thought for Bette Davis in Dark Victory. So I don't know. I thought her performance was very good. And then with that additional context, I was like, well, I still think as a romantic interest, he should have been honest with her. But I guess as a doctor, he didn't technically have to be.
Crazy.
Crazy. Yeah. Goodbye, Mr. Chips, I so strongly recommend. Abby failed to mention it. I'm sure she just forgot. It is a beautiful movie, in my opinion. Very wholesome. If you want to just like have a feel-good movie, watch that one from this year. Wizard of Oz, definitely recommend. A lot of things will be culturally familiar to audiences, and I'd actually be surprised if most people hadn't seen this, because I do feel like
what the fuck are you doing?
You know, it's kind of ubiquitous.
Why are you listening to us instead of watching Wizard of Oz?
Yes. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, I think it is a better version of Mr. Deeds.
Yeah.
If you want to watch like a Frank Capra TM movie, that's probably the one to watch. Ninotchka may be the first half for Greta Garbo's performance, but probably not worth watching in totality. But did you guys notice that Bela Lugosi was in it?
Who was he?
Was he?
Yeah. He plays the commissar at the end who like censored at Paris. That was him. Yeah, that was Dracula. Mr. Dracula.
As if they didn't
not clock
insinuate
that at
the
all.
Soviet Union was evil enough. They make fucking Dracula the town mayor.
I know. Of Mice and Men, if you're going to watch a film adaptation of it, I think this one's probably the one to watch. Gone with the Wind.
I forgot to mention, but I endorse it. Yeah. It's so important, a movie.
Right. I think watch it knowing the context of the time in which it was like actually made, not with the sort of false context that no one knew any better. Performance is very good. It is a very epic, grand, sweeping movie. I would say it's kind of a soft recommendation at the end of the day from me. But as for choosing the winner for this year, I guess we can go in the same order. If you were a voting Academy member, what would you have checked the box for?
Wizard of Oz.
Wow. Spit that right out. No hesitation. Okay.
I've been thinking about it. I don't know that I love any of the choices, but Wizard of Oz I think is the best one.
Wow.
I think it is doing a lot of really interesting stuff with the medium in a way that is extremely thoughtful in terms of the technological progression and that kind of thing, and kind of showing where Hollywood was and where it is at this time. And I think that despite it being a children's movie, Dorothy is like one of the better characters. Like obviously Scarlett O'Hara, there's so much meat on the bone. Vivian Leigh does a great job, but I simply cannot endorse that movie. But I think it's really interesting to me that so many of these movies this year are the role of a woman is to be a good girl, basically. And that's what happens to like 90% of the female characters in these movies is they become a better person. And by better person, we mean they are more acceptable to polite society. And I think that happens to Dorothy too, but I just think that it is somehow more acceptable when it's a literal child. Yeah. But I think Wizard of Oz is my pick.
That's such a good point. I love the way you set that framing earlier on in our discussion today, because it helped me to understand a lot of the movies in a little bit of a different light. So thank you for that, and feel like it expanded my horizons a little bit.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's weird because I think it kind of occurred to me after watching all of these and thinking, wait a second, this happens to all these women this year. This is wild.
Yeah.
I can tell you straight out, this is the hardest year so far with this question. I am really at a loggerheads here. Mm-hmm. I do want to say something, and this might piss some people off and it might make me look bad, but I've never lied to you people that listen to our podcast. I do think that Gone with the Wind is the best movie this year. I do not think it should win Best Picture Oscar because of the inarguable damage it has done to American culture and history that is now clear to me after fully viewing it, how much our presuppositions were colored by this and Birth of a Nation and so many other things in this time period, and the damage that's caused up to today. This movie should not be awarded. That said, it is the most beautiful, most technically impressive, most well executed, most interesting, I think, of the movies. But I can't give it an award for those reasons I mentioned. And for that reason, I want to give it to Of Mice and Men. Although I love Mr. Chips, and if he was alive, I would worship him. I would follow him like little Igor follows Dr. Frankenstein. I think it's not necessarily the best movie. And I would give that to Of Mice and Men. I think that was a beautiful, beautiful film that really captured the spirit of that decade. And the performances were knockout and just really emotional. It's Of Mice and Men for me.
For me, it's actually Stagecoach. No, just kidding. Just joking.
Damn, that running W really got you, huh?
Oh no, running W gonna give this movie the W. No, I also am gonna go with Wizard of Oz. I'm gonna be honest. I actually, leading up to watching Gone with the Wind, I still was like, okay, Wizard of Oz, I feel like would have won if not for Gone with the Wind. Yeah. But Gone with the Wind is so good. But I also expected to agree with the Academy because of what I remembered Gone with the Wind as. But definitely rewatching it and having all of this context, I'm actually walking away feeling much more like The Wizard of Oz did more for me to make movies actually feel magical and progress so much of what you can do with color, with film, with narrative, with musicals, ultimately, because I do love musicals. So I just felt like that left such a more like hopeful and optimistic and magical feeling for movies versus Gone with the Wind, even though it was very, very, again, epic with great performances. Even if I were to ignore the damaging stereotypes that are in it, I still think I would choose at this point Wizard of Oz.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. I think
I'm prejudiced towards children's movies, but that's okay.
Oh yeah, any other thoughts before we look at next year's nominees?
What a year. Thank you, Hollywood. This was far and away the most interesting year so far.
I would agree with
that.
Don't
be so racist, please.
Hollywood says no promises. Okay, looking at the 13th Academy Awards for our next episode, the nominees for that year: All This and Heaven 2, Foreign Correspondent, The Grapes of Wrath, The Great Dictator, Kitty Foyle, The Letter, The Long Voyage Home, Our Town, The Philadelphia Story, and the winner, Rebecca.
So many. So many again.
So many movies. But thank you, everyone, for joining us on this journey. And tune in, like, comment, subscribe so you can get updates about our next episode and any bonus content that comes out in between.